I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bear with me for a minute, get my paperwork straight. Here we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Welcome to our regular meeting of March the 5th. Please note the council's in full attendance. Hello, Ms. Solis. I didn't get to say hello to you.
How you doing?
Very good. Okay, items from council. I have one thing real quick, before we have several things. I wanted to compliment a staff member. I'm going to read a message I got about, it says, shout out to Linda with maintenance, who went above and beyond by fishing my keys out of the toilet at the community center. She didn't have to and went way above and beyond in customer service and made my afternoon infinitely better. Can you put in a good word with the supervisors? So, Colby, you're here, okay. So she can get some kudos. She's an example of what is right with Victoria. And I have met her. I talked to Colby before the meeting. I remember her. Very, very good person to be associated with the city. So thank you. Want to make sure you tell her I read that. So, okay. All right, we have a couple of proclamations. Council, y'all just want to get those done first?
Sure.
Okay.
The first is a proclamation for National Junior Catholic Daughters of the Americas Day. And it's been signed by the mayor, and it reads in part, whereas on February 22nd, 1926, an action-oriented program was created for Catholic girls to practice the Catholic faith and live a life of service and charitable works. And whereas the purpose and mission of the Junior Catholic Daughter Program is based on a threefold program of involvement of message, service, and the community, with a motto of be useful and a standard to love God and serve others and live nobly. And whereas the Junior Catholic Daughter Program provides opportunities for girls to develop as a Christian, learn to work from the good work of others, grow spiritually, and become creative and flexible to the current needs and concerns of the times. Now, therefore, I, Paul Pulosic, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do officially declare February 17th, 2019 to be observed as the 93rd anniversary of the National Junior Catholic Daughters of the Americas Day in Victoria, Texas.
And we have some members here. Y'all want to come forward? We can take a picture if you like. Thank you. Very proud of all of you. Thanks for being here this evening. And you bet. We have another proclamation.
This is in honor of the National Social Work Month, and it reads in part, whereas the social work profession is expected to grow faster than average over the next 7 years, with more than 682,000 people expected to be employed as social workers by 2026. Whereas social workers evaluate and empower people, giving them the ability to solve problems, cope with personal roadblocks, and get the resources they need to succeed. Whereas social workers are the largest group of mental health services in the United States, and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is one of the largest employers of social workers holding advanced degrees. Now, therefore, in recognition of the numerous contributions made by the American social workers, I, Paul Pulosic, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do officially declare the month of March 2019 as National Social Workers Month.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone here to accept this?
I know Melissa's here.
You want to come up?
Melissa's one of our parks commissioners.
Okay, we do have the update next. Thank you, ladies, for being here, by the way. So, on Hurricane Harvey disaster recovery grant programs. Before we do that, anybody have anything?
I have one item. I was wondering if there was some way during our open dockets that we have at the municipal court, where we encourage people to come in instead of doing the warrant roundup, if we could do a relaxation of the parking rules, just so that people aren't running in and out and missing their times, and seeing if there's some way. I'd hate for people to get tickets while they're in here trying to take care of their business because they don't have a place to park.
Councilman Young, Dr. Young called me Friday and asked the same question. So we're working something with Tiffany Court for the parking lot, on if there's some kind of, sticker or whatever we can allow them to have to put in their windshield.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
That'd be
But
great.
just
That's
for
a good
the
idea.
parking lot. But no matter what, we're not going to have enough parking spaces to accommodate all the people that come down. So, but we're looking at it.
Or we put our parking lot, the city hall parking lot, not street parking?
Yeah, City Hall parking lot. Yeah. But they're going to they're parked all over. My understanding is they've been parked a couple blocks off because there's just so many coming in. So,
Has someone
That's
gotten
good that we have that turnout. I just
and
Yeah, you just hate
Hate that
to
we're-
have somebody get
come in,
penalized
Well-
for taking care of their business as well. It's
Yeah.
trying to remedy that.
Did someone get penalized?
I don't know if they got tickets, but they were having to constantly run in and out, like set their watch, and then they would miss their time that they were supposed to be taking care of business, had to get rescheduled on the docket when they came back in from redoing their parking.
And that was for
It's-
parking on the parking lot.
Yeah.
So we'll work on
And it just
that.
made it disruptive, I think.
Yes, sir. No, not a problem. We can
Thank
work
you.
on that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have two, I guess, relatively small things, but during citizen communication, I find a lot of times that I would like to know what the person's relationship is with Victoria, why they have come to the Victoria City Council to voice whatever their concern is. And I know people used to say their address, and probably for privacy reasons, we've stopped doing that. But as a result, we don't know where they've come from or what their relation is. And so I was just wondering whether we could ask people to state their name and their connection to Victoria, whether they live here, whether they work here, whether they shop here, whether they have a relative here, whether they just heard we had an open forum. It's just a thought for something for y'all to think about. But I personally would like to know what their relationship is when they come.
Is there any issue with that, Mr. Goose?
No, I don't believe there's any issue with that at all. Obviously, we would not deny someone the right to speak to council because they happen to live outside the city limits or happen to not have a direct enough connection to the city. But I don't think there's any problem with asking them to state whether they live inside or outside the city limits or some other. This is an item of mayoral discretion, how this section of the meeting gets run, and so I'm going to punt it to you, Mayor Pelosi.
And
But I
we'll
couldn't
take it
talk
up.
to him outside the meeting, so I have to bring it up here.
I expect the mayor is going to take about 7 weeks to make that decision.
In the July meeting. I would suggest we ask as needed. Not necessarily any rigid policy. I would encourage any one of you, if someone comes up, the fact is, one of the 7 of us knows probably 90% of the people that come up and speak. Maybe not 90%, but the majority of it, no need to ask. But if you're curious, I don't see any reason with asking. That's just what I would suggest.
Can't talk to them unless it's on the.
Sure you can.
Okay.
You can ask a question. I don't know.
Yes, you can ask a factual question.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to be that rigid here. There is a few occasions, there's no ill intent with what you're asking. It's just, there's, a lot of times the 7 of us are, we know a bit more of the story, don't we? And we know the situation. And, people watching on TV can be completely perplexed and think, God, those guys don't know what to ask. Well, we already know the answer. That goes hand in hand with some of the discussion occasionally that needs to be for clarification for the public. That's the way I see that. So again, my response to you is on a case-by-case basis, if any of the 7 of us feels we want to ask that question, I would ask it.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
My second item is that I believe this Thursday, University of Houston Victoria is having a continuation of their homeless symposium. I don't know if it's a series. I'm not in any way connected with the university and don't really have the details, but I certainly became aware of it, became aware that the city had been asked for some participation. I believe we'd had some participation. And so 2 points is, first of all, Julie, our Director of Developmental Services, I believe is on the panel, which is certainly an indication that the city has some involvement and some understanding. And I'm pleased that she's going to be able to do that. I personally had planned to go. I've had a death in the family and I'm not able to attend, and I apologize for that. And I'm hoping that some of the other council can go. I don't think we're expected to act in any official capacity, but apparently we've been invited, and so I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware.
Is there any details on this invitation?
I don't have one. I wasn't invited. It's just what I read in the Advocate.
If you read the Advocate. I don't.
Okay, well, I'd like to attend, but I've received no invitation to go to either the first one or this one.
Right, I didn't receive any information on the first
Okay.
one. This second one is this Wednesday, or this Thursday at 5:30 in room 111. I've had it in my calendar for a month.
It would seem if they wanted us to attend, they would invite us.
You would think
Or
so.
reach out to us to ask us to be there.
Maybe they're going to do it here in the meeting when I open public
Okay.
communications. So I see some
novel.
interest out there.
But for anyone in the community that's interested, because I believe this is open to the community, I don't believe this is the city responsibility. I believe it's the community responsibility, and that means everybody watching and everybody not watching.
Okay. Did you?
I did. If I can have, we have staff look at Vine Street and at the speed limit along there, and kind of review that. It speeds up through a neighborhood section, and if they can make any recommendations, I'd appreciate it.
Be glad to. We'll bring back a report at the next meeting.
Thank you.
You might try that little trick they tried down my street, Charmel. That speed limit sign that has the speed that you're going.
Uh-huh.
When we had the airline closed, so they put one right in front of my house. I guess everybody thought I had called it in, but I think it was one of my neighbors. But anyway, I mean, that slowed down the traffic tremendously.
Well, there's a section of Vine in front of neighborhoods that's 35, and most of them are 30 through residential areas, so I believe it's a little fast, but I'll let
And the school
staff.
zone,
Well, that's correct.
and the school zone.
Trinity?
And it's marked as a school zone during the certain times, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll be glad to look at that.
Thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
You jarred my memory. I don't know why. I started thinking about potholes. On Navarro,
Ours got fixed during the half marathon.
yeah.
Thank you.
No. On Navarro, which is the state of Texas, not the city. Navarro, it's the state, not the city. But we're,
Guy Grant.
Guy Grant, yeah, I knew you'd know. is where our concrete stops. Man, it's eroded out real bad there. I don't know who to call up in
us.
Austin.
That,
you know,
no,
to
that transition, that transition
ours?
there will, well, and Ken's not here. I know Ken worked with the state on, up at Glasgow during that, transition.
It's very
So,
bad. It
yeah,
needs
it's-
to be dealt with
It's
quick.
bad at Sam Houston too, but we'll look at it. And that was a new, I know Daryl's here, but that was a new process that they tried out at Glasgow that we did to see, and I think it's working well, and so we were gonna use that same process. Okay. Okay, so, it's on our list.
Okay. Good. Scary looking.
Yeah, that concrete pushes, and it's,
Okay. Any other items from council? If you think of something, Mr. Halifax.
Jan and I met with Thomas quite a few times, or not very many times, but anyway, to come up with a property acquisition policy. Now, this is, and there's in your read file. I would prevail upon everyone to read this and see what it means, but it is not something that would bind council going forward. It would be something that you'd use as a tool. And if you just read even the first paragraph, you start out, do you want to follow this policy on this project or not? Because we can't bind a future council, well, what we do. But I would encourage you to read it and understand why we even came up with it. Because delays can be very costly, as we've known. And so this would be a good way to keep that in check. But it does mean that council will have to make this decision every time there is a project. So please, if y'all would read this, and like to get a head nod on it to make maybe the next time around or something, just to make sure everybody was good with it.
And I'd like to follow on with that to clarify what we're talking about here is an internal procedure of the legal department. This will go into our department policy manual, and it'll guide my department not only while I'm here, but if I have a replacement in the future, in how council wants to see that property acquisition process move forward. The first step would be coming to council with this policy in hand to lay out the timelines and make sure that council members are comfortable with the acquisition process timeline that's going forward.
This is, of course, loosely based on TxDOT guidelines, and it allows us to go actually step by step with TxDOT guidelines if we so choose, or not. You know, it is flexible.
And who designed this?
That was my department.
Jan Scott and I
Myself,
worked
my
on it.
staff, working with Jan and Tom.
Okay.
And Thomas Bush, of course.
so do you need any action?
No, we don't need any formal action unless there's comment back. I think Tom wanted council members to have an opportunity to look over this and then comment whether they think it's a good idea or not at a future meeting.
I think it has a great amount of value. It could be a good thing, but you have to read it and understand it and buy into it. If you don't, well, then we start back over.
So could we just have 2 weeks to review it and give a consensus at the next meeting?
Done.
That sounds good.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and, John, give your status report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Anybody hate this picture as much as I do? A couple weeks ago, you received a report about our FEMA and insurance claims. This week, I'm going to talk to you about all of our ongoing grant programs, disaster recovery grant programs, and where we stand with those. First one is the FEMA program, Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. We have 2 projects in this program, the first of which is a library wind retrofit program. That is a project to install mechanical shutter system to protect the library windows in the event of a future windstorm. We submitted this application, or GrantWorks on our behalf submitted this application on December 26th. It has a project cost estimate of about $242,000, and HMGP is a 75-25 cost share program. Second project is a generator project to install permanent emergency generators at the police station and at the community center. This project was submitted to the state on December 28th, has a project cost estimate total of just over $1 million. And again, there is a 75-25 cost share. As of about 2 weeks ago, both of these projects were forwarded to the State Hazard Mitigation Officer for their authorization. That is step 5 in a 12-step application review process that is carried out by TDEM and FEMA. The next step is for it to be submitted to FEMA for their review. In my discussions with GrantWorks, we think we have a pretty good possibility of getting these grants approved. What we don't know is whether they will be approved as primary or alternate projects. Primary meaning a primary project would automatically go into funding status if it's approved by FEMA. Alternates are put on a queue and wait there until all primary projects are funded first. Then if projects fall out over time or if additional funding is allocated to the program, they pull projects from the alternate queue and move them into funded status. Timeline, best case, and that means these projects are approved with primary status. We're probably 6 to 8 months from receiving a funding award from FEMA and through TDEM. Second program we're working with is the Community Development Block Grant Program, Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR. We received 2 allocations, or will receive 2 allocations in 2 programs. One, the infrastructure program funded at a little over $6 million. The buyout program funded at about $2.4 million. These projects are funded 100% by HUD with no local match required. The infrastructure program, some of the general requirements, briefly, we have to tie each project back to Harvey, meaning it has to be infrastructure that was either damaged by Harvey or drainage projects to alleviate flooding in areas that were flooded during the Harvey event. The second primary requirement is that at least 70% of this funding must benefit low to moderate income areas. Initially, we've identified several projects. We've talked about these: the floodgate replacement project to replace up to 5 existing floodgates along the Guadalupe River, primarily along the levee. 1 out of those 5 may not be eligible, the one in Riverside Park in front of the zoo, not because it's in Riverside Park and this is CDBG money, but because it is located in an area that will be floodway once the new FEMA maps are adopted, and we don't think there's a chance that GLO will not approve that one, but most likely we'll be able to do 4 of those 5 existing floodgates, maybe all 5. Second project, stormwater pump station project. That's the installation of permanent facilities to pump stormwater, localized stormwater over the levee and into the river during times when those floodgates are closed. And then we are also looking at additional drainage system improvements in that vicinity, the vicinity of the existing floodgates and where the proposed pump stations would go to improve drainage and get it to more efficiently to those pumps and generally improve our drainage situation throughout that entire area. To date, urban engineering has been authorized to begin the application process, the engineering side of applications. They are identifying and scoping the projects. They'll put together preliminary cost estimates. We've also identified an initial target area for infrastructure. It is shown in the map on this slide, and it essentially is the floodplain areas within the floodplain of the Guadalupe River that are impacted by those 5 floodgates and would be impacted by the proposed pump stations. And those are generally the areas, floodplain areas west of Moody, and those floodplain areas generally south of Water Street, all the way down to the city limit.
John?
Yes, sir.
You know about how many homes are in that area?
I don't have a count yet. That's part of the application process to get an exact count. I would be guessing if I gave you a count right now.
You don't want to guess, do you?
I don't want to guess. I can get that information for you, Mayor. They're actually working on those right now, both for this program and for the buyouts.
People would look at this and say, well, it'd be cheaper to buy those homes, but We can't do that,
It's
can
a
we?
significant number of homes.
Yeah, we can't, I don't think it could, but, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Again, where we are today, or what still needs to be done going forward, Grant Works will be using census data and door-to-door surveys to qualify the target area as 51% low and moderate income. That we anticipate to happen by May. They will, again, urban engineering is identifying and scoping the projects. We will need to document the tie back to Harvey, which is something I've been working on today. We'll have to do a 30-day public comment period and then submit our application to the General Land Office. That deadline has been extended from April 30th to August 30th at our request. We hope that it will not take that long, but we know that Grant Works will not be prepared by April 30th to submit this application. The buyout program. Again, this is about $2.4 million that's been allocated to us. The general guidelines, first of all, it applies to residential property only. I learned today further clarification that applies to single-family residential property only, no multifamily. Property must have sustained Harvey-related storm damage. So far, they're still sticking with their interpretation that that does not have to be flood damage. It can be any hurricane damage. However, the property must be located within a 100-year floodplain or floodway. Again, at least 70% of this money has to be spent in low and moderate income or on benefiting lower and moderate income participants. It cannot be an area benefit. They have to be based on income. The program will pay for pre-storm fair market value. It also may include or will include buyout incentives, including down payment assistance and other replacement housing type assistance programs. And finally, the acquired properties must be demolished, cleared, and maintained as permanent open space.
Is that program in effect now, or is going to be in effect?
Which program?
The buyout program.
These are the approved guidelines to date by the GLO for the program, but yes, it is in effect, and it's not a new program. It's been around for many years. And we have never qualified for this funding before.
But you're not taking applications today?
Oh, no, we are not prepared to take applications. Okay. To submit our application, we just need data on how many houses are there, what percentage of them are low and moderate income, what percentage are owner occupied versus renter, all that kind of data to submit our application.
And then once we have the
money. Once we have an approved application, we have a funding award, then we will start the program.
And these are the types of owners that we've been looking for?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, well, to date, our target area has been identified, that being all areas within the 100-year floodplain or floodway of the Guadalupe River, within city limits, of course. That generally would include Greens Edition. That target area that I just showed you, lost my spot. In this map for the infrastructure area. And it will also include a small subdivision named the Jewett Edition. That's on the edge of the city limits down off of Pleasant Green. That is it's kind of on the edge of the city, but it is within the Guadalupe River floodplain. Grant Works has assigned staff to coordinate the buyout application. In fact, I had my first conference call with that individual this afternoon to get started on this, the application details. Still left to be done. We need to develop our Grant Works in cooperation with the city. Will develop our program design and guidelines. One of the questions that will have to be answered at that time is whether we will include rental properties, whether they will be eligible in the program. That is a decision for the city to make.
Who determines that?
The city council will determine whether we will open it up to both. Every indication that I'm receiving is that due to the limited amount of funding, the recommendation I'm hearing so far from Grant Works is that we limit our applications to owner-occupied applicants only for multiple reasons that we can get into later. But it's not just the limited funding, but it's also some of the Uniform Relocation Act requirements for rental properties. Again, we'll have a public comment period, and The deadline, as with infrastructure, is August 30th. Finally, the Natural Resources Conservation Service Emergency Watershed Protection Program, that's the longest name for a grant program we're working on. These are the projects to address riverbank erosion caused by the Harvey flooding by regrading those riverbanks and installing slope protection in 2 locations. The first one, of course, is within Riverside Park, 600 feet of riverbank. That project also includes the repair of a damaged sanitary sewer main that serves Grover's Bend. The second area is approximately 600 feet of riverbank adjacent to the river intake pump by the surface water pumping station. Altogether, the estimated cost of these projects is almost $2 million. The city's approximate obligation is about $295,000. We started this process back in October of 17. We retained Doucette Engineering in this last summer to develop preliminary engineering. That was completed in the fall. NRCS actually received the EWP funding in late 2018, and in September, City Council authorized the acceptance of federal assistance. Last week, we received the final agreement from NRCS and is currently being reviewed by Legal and Finance. And the timeline for this project, we expect to have an agreement in front of you in April or May to approve the grant. Retain Doucette Engineering in around May or June of this year for engineering, which should be completed by October. Bid the project in November, begin construction in January of 2020, with anticipated completion by September of 2020. And that concludes my update on these grant programs, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you have.
John, when you say begin the construction, is that when you're doing the buyout and demolition and all that stuff, or are you
No.
talking about the application
The last
itself?
slide is specifically on the riverbank erosion project.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
But I do think it's important, I was going to remind people, when you talk about the application for the buyout program, that's us submitting the application.
That's correct.
For
Okay, I
the
understand that.
funding.
We are
So,
not prepared to
yeah,
accept applications.
the public, so the public
Yes.
understands we are not taking
However,
applications right
I
now.
would recommend that anyone who is interested in the program call our office, call the city manager's office. We're keeping a list of anybody that we've received an email or a phone call expressing interest in the buyout program, so that they'll be on a mailing list or contact list for us. So we're happy to talk to people about it. I can't begin to give you an estimated timeline of once we submit this application, whether it's middle of summer or the end of August. I cannot give you a timeline of when we would expect to get approval through the GLO. We don't have that information yet.
And it's a voluntary buyout.
It is
The
completely
resident-
voluntary. That's correct.
Got 2 questions. Are you done, Ms. Solis?
I just wanted to ask one more question. The 30-day public comment, I know that would be done before you submit our application.
Correct.
What do you expect to get from those comments? What kind of comments do you want? What are you expecting for the public to call in or ask you?
I really don't know what to expect, ma'am. It's a program that we have not done before. Typically, when we have public comment periods on a CDBG action plan, as you know, we get very little, if any, input. I would expect that to be a little maybe different in this case because of the impact that Harvey had. So I would expect the people that live in the neighborhoods that would be impacted by these infrastructure projects would be very interested to see what's happening. And of course, anybody within the Guadalupe River floodplain would be encouraged to come and speak about those guidelines. That public comment period will be on regarding our guidelines for the program. So who is eligible? How much money are you eligible for? And how is that value going to be determined, and on down the line? So by that time, we'll at least know how the program, or what the program's going to look like, and it'll give somebody something for somebody to comment on. We just don't have that yet.
Will the guidelines for the flood zone or the flood plains where they have to raise their houses, is that still going to be, part of this recovery group too? They would have to still comply with that?
Well, There's really nothing there, there's nothing what we're doing there that would affect that. We would be demoing houses that we buy in the buyout program, and we're not doing any other housing work with any of these particular grant programs. So we're not going to be rebuilding or repairing houses in the floodplain.
Do you know how it's going to affect our tax base? I mean, our revenue from the taxes if we take over?
Until we have numbers and we know the values of those homes and how many of them are going to participate, it's part of the analysis that GrantWorks has to do in our application. It will be estimated or in the application as something that GLO requires for us to provide.
I have a question related to that. Since you said that we would be demolishing these homes and because they couldn't be rebuilt again because it is in the flood zone or floodplain, so I assume we wouldn't have any objection if the property owner, I know these houses have probably had a lot of damage, but we hear periodically that people are emotionally attached to these homes because grandpa was born here or generations lived here. People would be able to move these homes to different locations, and we would not object to that, assuming.
The city has no objection. I don't think that question has been addressed specifically yet by the GLO as to how that fits into the program. Everything is going to have to follow the CDBG guidelines and the GLO action plan, and I haven't heard any indication of an answer to that question yet. But it's a good one for us to follow up on.
I don't think with the buyout they let you do that because when my sister-in-law lost her house in Houston, she couldn't even take the stove out. So once they come in and they see what you have to leave it in the house. So that.
I know that was the case in our FEMA buyout program
Right.
that we did after '98.
Yeah, so I don't think that might be an option we can ask.
Yeah, because that really is a deterrent to people being willing to sell their homes.
Yeah, let go.
Can be.
I had two questions. On the library wind retrofit shutters project, when coming up with that grant, did we look at window replacement versus storm shutters? And is it possible on those windows to get storm rated?
I don't know. James, do you have an answer to that? I don't think we looked at that option.
The only thing that we actually looked at was actually looking at doing similar to what we did here at City Hall with ballistic film. That's the only thing we've sort of looked at, but not replacing out the windows, no.
Okay, I was just curious if one came out better than the other versus cost. The second was on the generators project. Is the community center considered a hardened facility?
No. I don't think anybody would define it as such. The purpose that the community center typically serves, as you know, is after a disaster to house support services, various, pod distribution points, state agencies that need a place to come in and operate out of for a period of time. Those are typically the things that we try to, and it's been used for a location for organizing evacuations in advance of a storm, but it's not considered a shelter.
A staging location.
Correct.
So I just wonder if it's worth spending the money for a permanent generator there for a facility that may or may not make it through a storm. We don't have to worry about that right now.
Well, and at the time, when we received notice, we don't have to accept the grant either.
Yeah.
So.
We initially identified these projects as projects for quick connections. And we were encouraged by GrantWorks to go ahead and submit the full application for the generators and see how the cost-benefit calculation came out. And, it went forward so far.
Okay, thank you.
What happened to the one on the rebuild of that fire station? That not viable?
It was not, well, it's a difficult project to do with these funds. It was not an HMGP, hazard mitigation eligible project, or let me put it this way, it would not have met enough of their criteria to go forward, so we knew it was a waste of time. We could consider it possibly as a CDBG project, but again, it's extremely difficult to meet the CDBG guidelines. And for the amount of money, we would probably have to do it as part of the 30% that's not LMI. And it's just, going through that process is really not worth it. We think we will get more good out of these infrastructure projects of fixing all the drainage issues. And we believe we will have that full $6 million worth of projects doing drainage improvements in the area along the river.
Okay. Any more questions, council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Last chance items from council. This has been a long items from council. Did y'all have anything else?
Can I pull D2, please? Just for
Pull
clarification.
D2. Okay. Nothing else? I think there's some people wanting to talk to us in the audience, so we will open citizens' communication. And please limit your comments. Just come up and give us your name for the record. We'll ask if we need to know anything else. And limit your remarks to 5 minutes, please. I wasn't
Dolly
teasing.
Stokes, Victoria County United Way, and I'm a resident of the city of Victoria. I'm here to support another agenda item, but when I heard the discussion about the homeless symposium, the University of Houston is the sponsor of the symposium. And this is the second of a two-part series. Both Jenny Stafford here with Midcoast and I are participating in it on the panel and supporting it. But the University of Houston is the organizer of it. I had understood that they sent tons and tons of emails out and they had a master list. So I assumed you were on it, but I do not know and had nothing to do with it. I can tell you it's Thursday night, it's the second part, and the purpose of the second seminar, and it's free to everyone, is to talk about what's being done on homelessness. So we'll talk a little bit, Midcoast will talk a little bit, at Promise Point we'll talk a little bit, and then there'll be an open discussion. So I hope that, and it's at University, the North Building in the big auditorium at 5:30.
Okay. Come on up. Citizens communication is still open.
My name is Bud Hankins, and it's relative to my conversation with you today to tell you that I live at 5407 Country Club Drive. For about the last 2.5 years, I've been contacting the code enforcement group here in Victoria about some property that is behind us. The property that backs up to me is Spring Creek, and there's been some dumping going on there for some time. Code enforcement has sent out some people. They even put up a camera in a tree to try and film this activity, and I've called them a couple of times when I've noticed it going on, and they've come out and reviewed the camera, but this is over 2 years now, and I haven't heard anything back. Hurricane Harvey did quite a landscape change on the creek. There's a lot of trees that are down. The city maintains up into where my property begins. They maintain the creek, the maintenance of it, and then I don't go down to the middle of the creek. That's owned by the property owners. There is a large tree that's been falling across the creek that Public Works tells me that they've had contracts out on. They have to have 3 contracts in order to get it done. It's been there since the hurricane and nothing's changed. So I continue to call the city, those 2 areas, and my concern was that, mostly from a safety issue now, what might transpire over a period of time with this creek being backed up and full of debris and stuff is something that did indeed happen. And in the month of December, we started having coyotes in our backyard. This happened the entire month of December. Not every night, but most of the time. And it's a pretty frightening scene to watch a coyote chase a cat across your backyard and hear screams. So I've called the Public Works back again in December, and they said there wasn't anything they could do about that. They would try and do something about the dumping and stuff. I was on a Saturday, the first week in December, after not getting anything from either one of those 2 departments, I contacted the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and they gave me the name of a government trapper. The city of Victoria, I think, has used this government trapper down in the park, he came out and he put in a couple of traps in the backyard and posted a sign. We contacted the police department to let them know if we trapped one of these coyotes, we were going to kill it. Well, we've had nothing but rain since then. The traps were not successful. But at any given time, I would have 2 or 3 coyotes in our backyard. The only way I could run them off was to yell at them and scream at them to get them out of here. You know, in the state of Texas, you can hunt coyotes 24/7 outside the city limits. Once they get inside the city limits, it's a totally different situation. The trapper tells me that one of the biggest areas that they have 2 full-time government trappers trapping coyotes is in the city of Houston, in downtown city Houston. So my problem is I've made these phone calls. I called the city manager's department 2 weeks ago and told them what I'm telling you now, and have not heard back from anyone. I mean, this is an issue that the coyotes now have just gone through their breeding season, and within about 8 weeks, our population of coyotes in the city of Victoria is going to at least double, maybe triple. It doesn't seem like we have any type of a program to address this. There is I spoke with the county commissioners meeting here back in December, and they do have a program called Texas Predator Control Program, and you should know something about it, evidently, Mayor. When the trapper came out and set these 2 traps in my backyard, he said this is the first time he's done anything like that in the city of Victoria. Now, I've seen coyotes in Victoria before, but not in my backyard. And these coyotes, typically they hunt in about a 2 square mile area, which means they could have been in your backyard, Mayor. Or certainly on the other side of the creek is a pretty nice subdivision and Hidden Meadows Country Club. That creek is an absolute mess. And if nothing else, it's giving a place for our coyotes to at least roam through there. And I'm hoping we can do something about it.
Is this Whispering Creek or Spring Creek?
Well, it may be one or the other. I'm not real sure. I've
Is
already
it the dip there in on Country Club Drive?
It is, yes.
Okay, so that'll be Whispering Creek there.
Okay, well, then I stand corrected. Whichever creek it is, it's a creek that is maintained to a certain point and then it stops. And
Right.
from where it stopped, it's a mess.
Quick question, who did the traps? Who placed the traps out for you?
He's a government trapper.
But with Texas Parks and Wildlife?
He's with the Texas Predator Control Program, which is a part of Texas, sponsored by Texas Parks and Wildlife.
That's not the guy the county pays?
It is the guy the county pays.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good to hear that. Because
Yes.
you do live in the county, so.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you
But
availed
is
yourself
this
of
a county
that.
issue or is this a city issue?
No, well, you mentioned a lot of issues, and most of them sound like ours, but with respect to the coyotes, I think you went to the right people there, so, good.
We didn't trap any coyotes. They're still there.
Okay. You gotta keep trying, is that the issue, or?
Well, right now with the weather like it was, he pulled up
Yeah.
his traps last week. But you know, this is something. I don't know how we address it. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's a start, but
Yes,
it's
sir.
not been an answer yet. So,
Okay,
thank you.
we'll follow up. Citizens communication is still open, if anyone would like to speak about anything. Hey, how are you? Do we need to ask his connection to the city?
Thomas Jost. I live at 2403 Lamar Drive. And the mayor brought up a point earlier. He was talking about the Navarra Street, Sam Houston, the little dip there that you hit. We got a couple other ones the same way, inside the city limits. You got one on the corner of Mockingbird and Laurent, going eastbound, right there by Pat Pratka's office. There's a deep hole there. Where the 2 pavements meet, you got a space about way far that tire will fall into. You also got one more at the corner of Sam Houston and Murray Lane, eastbound also, right there in front of the high school. Those 2 are holes in the ground that you can drop a car almost into because of the difference between the 2 pavements. So if we could get those repaired, it'd sure be nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jost. Citizens communication still open? Okay, seeing no one get up, we'll close citizens communication. And we have 2 items with public hearings.
The first, item C1, is an ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the Victoria City Code to update procedures related to emergency management, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for enforcement, publication, codification, and savings, and declaring an effective date.
You want to go ahead and we'll do the public hearing on this item first. If anyone would like to speak to C1 alone only, this would be the time. Please come forward. Okay, seeing no one get up, we'll close the public hearing on C1 and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any questions or discussion?
I have a slight question. This is the plan, the emergency management plan that both the city and the county do together.
Yes, ma'am.
But the city is the one that has the, what do they call him, the director? And the city and the county both answer to him because he's got the plan, right?
That's not
Yeah,
quite
it
right.
actually does.
It's close. Both the city and the county each have a director.
Oh,
The
okay.
mayor, by state law, is the director for the city.
Okay,
I believe for the county, it's the county judge, but I'm not a county law lawyer, so I'm kind of guessing there.
okay. So do we use the same facility or do they have theirs and we have ours? No, it's.
We share it.
It's
Okay.
a
we
joint,
share.
it's the joint facility.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay, any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Ayes have it.
Item C2 is an ordinance amending Chapter 15 and Chapter 24 of the Victoria City Code to update and revise alarm system content for compliance and relevance, to add fees for alarm system permits, and a false alarm fine schedule, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for codification, enforcement, publication, and savings, and declaring an effective date. Mayor, although you have this here as the first reading, you'll remember that this was previously on our agenda. We do have a motion and a second already on file for this. I believe we also already had the public hearing. You're welcome to have another public hearing, but we can pick this item up without a motion.
Yeah, I want to do the public hearing afterwards. Give us a chance to talk about. Is there anyone here by chance that wants to talk about this item? I don't want to stifle anyone. I didn't think so. Okay. Let's go straight into the discussion then on C2.
If you don't mind, Captain Chief Jameson, I'll get it in just a second. The chief's back there doing this to me, Mark, can kind of, if you'll give him a few minutes, he can kind of bring back, where we were and where we are today as a reminder.
Well, greetings, Mayor and members of council. As you remember, do you push this button or do I? I guess I do. As you remember, we talked in December, and there was some things that had to be kicked around, and we, I believe, tabled the discussion, and we met with Councilman Bucknight and twice now, and have discussed a few things. But what I'd like to do, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to present this to you, is that there's really 4 reasons why we're looking at this tonight. The first part there would be the current ordinance that we have, I think, was drafted or taken in back in the 80s, and a lot of it isn't relevant to some of the things that we're doing today. It talks about the central alarm system and things like that. Years ago, the alarm system all was routed to dispatch, so if an alarm went off, a light went off at the 911 center, and then they would send officers. Well, that's not how things are done today. The second area, which is something that I had shared with you back in December, is we respond to somewhere around 35 to 3,500 alarm calls a year. 3,500. All right, there are businesses, there are residences, and things of that. 90% of the alarms that we respond to are false. So that number is the 3,000 plus false alarms that we're talking about that I have in front of you, and that averages to about 9 a day. To really understand the impact that has on our resources is you need to know that an alarm call is a high priority call, which requires 2 officers to be sent to. So these officers, whether they're on a call, whether they're working traffic, whether they're just checking a neighborhood or something like that, when that call goes out, they leave what they're doing and they respond to this. And that has a cost to it that I was able to put together. It's about $90,000. I had a number up there the last time when we did it in December, if you remember. It was lower than that, but that I'd only factored in, it was a mistake on my part, I'd only factored in the cost of one officer, and it takes two. Another area that is a little bit more important is that false alarms, and we were talking about it, but it diverts the resources away from those actual criminal and emergency responses. So you may have an officer that's going to a particular call, and this alarm call that we receive, which has a higher priority, they may stop that officer from responding to that call and divert them to go to another one. So you kind of start maybe getting an idea of how big of an issue this really is. The fourth and final reason that we need to look at this is it's become complacent. And I can tell you a little bit of a story, if I may, and it happens to the best of us. But years ago, I was on patrol, and we had a business, a commercial business. It was a carpenter shop, and it was in the area of Lewis and Laurent. I think it's been torn down since then. But we had responded probably 2 weeks in a row, every single night. And it would fluctuate between, 6 at night, 11 at night, but it was every single night. And I, along with one of the other officers, responded to the call. We pull in there, we hit the spotlight, put it up on it. And we had been there so many times that we walk in, and I'm really not paying much attention, to be honest with you. It just happened. We'd been there so many times. And as I'm walking in, I guess the owner had hired a friend of his to hide out in the building and jump out. They were having some problems, at least the owner thought, with vagrants coming in there. So as I and the other officer are going in and clearing this building, this subject jumps from behind a wall with a baseball bat in his hand. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but had I been searching that like I'm trained to do, I probably would have shot the gentleman because I didn't know that he was in there. But my point in all this is that I had become complacent. We have that problem today. I hear it on the radio all the time. Those two officers are sent, and because of the call volume that we already have, there's a lot of calls that we get on a daily basis. Officers have respect for that, and they will say, headquarters, I'll advise on 58, which means they're canceling that second unit because they think that it's a cry wolf syndrome, and they think they're going to show up and it's a false alarm. That's an officer safety issue that we need to try to avoid. So those are really the four reasons that we began to look at this number. And this project started back in 2016. We began to examine it and figure out ways that we might be able to try to reduce it. That's when we noticed that the ordinance that we had, there wasn't really a whole lot that that was in the ordinance that would address this. So we had to do the revision, and that's why I'm here with you tonight.
Chief, can I ask a question before you move from that?
Yes, sir.
Because it's your purpose. Obviously, you want to reduce the number of false alarms.
That's correct.
By creating an incentive that if they continue, people have to pay. But your problem is you can't find the people who need to pay. Is that a true statement?
That's part of it. That's
hence
part
the
of
registration?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure my thought process was right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. So how do we fix it? What we did is through the research that we had done, we had realized that a lot of the cities, this is a national problem. It's all over the country, and a lot of different departments are having to deal with it. But what we found through our research is that the successful, or the ones that have seen a reduction, have implemented a false alarm reduction initiative. They've actually, put together, the smart people got together and decided how they were going to address it, and they added some educational pieces to it. They changed some of their ordinances, and they work with some outsourcing companies that help with the billing and the advertisement and things like that. And nationally, the people that have done it, I looked at it nationally, and I looked at it on the state side. Up to 75% of those cities that implemented these reduction efforts have seen up to 75% reduction. So it works. It's proven. In the state of Texas, there's 197 cities that have done what I'm trying to propose to you tonight. There's 4 key elements to the success of their program, and they're listed ahead of you. One is the required registration, and as the mayor pointed out, that's so we know who the alarm user is. And it changes. If you're thinking about it just on the residential side, those don't necessarily change. Some of you may have alarms and you've had them for years. You have no intention of moving. It's probably not going to change. But we respond to the commercial and to the other businesses. Those change. You have different people that come in and run a new location. And maybe originally when the alarm was put in that the alarm company has, they might have the owner's information. That's not who we need to send the notification to that there's a problem. And I'm going to jump ahead. There's one business in town last year, and I'm going to give you this example. During June and July, we responded to 39 false alarms at their business. They were billed. They contacted us and let us know that hey, this was a problem on Suddenlink, their alarm provider, and we worked with them to credit them the fines that we had, that they had originally been billed. So I'd kind of jumped ahead of myself, so I'm going to go back to the second part of it is an escalating fine structure. Currently, we have in our code, after the 8th one, they begin to be billed $100. What Texas legislature has allowed us to do is and it's used in these other efforts, is an escalating. After the 3rd false alarm, we would notify them to say, hey, we've received a 3rd false alarm. Maybe you need to look at the system. Maybe you need to check with your alarm company provider and see if there's a sensitivity issue or something like that can be corrected. On the 4th and the 5th one, there's a fee that the state allows us to charge, and that's what I'm proposing to you is a $50 fee. Then after for the 6th and the 7th, it escalates to $75, and then the 8th and above, it's $100. Those are, each one of the cities that we looked at had something very similar. The amounts may have changed, but that's because of the state, that they're in. Texas allows us to do this. The third piece is an education process. And that's big because a lot of people don't really realize how big of an issue false alarms are. I mean, they really don't. And some people think maybe it's a nuisance or something like that. But if you look at the behind the scenes and you see the impact that it has on resources, you can begin to understand how big of an issue it is for the public, the public safety companies or agencies that are responding to it. In the proposal that is in front of you, there is an education piece to it. After that 8th false alarm, when we may or may not cancel response, we can require them to attend an online alarm user or false alarm class. It's already done. A lot of cities are already doing it. It gets into the different details of what causes a false alarm and how you can prevent a false alarm. It educates them on how big of an issue false alarms, what it causes, on resources and things like that. So that's key. And then the final thing is to utilize an appeals process. And I told you that story earlier. We don't really even have an appeals process set in place in our current ordinance, but since we began working on this, there's been a number of occasions that have happened in the last 6 months where I've been contacted about it, and we've tried to use some of the principles that we're going to use in the proposed appeals process, and it's worked. And I think you may have had Councilman Buck might have had someone who addressed and came and brought it to your attention, and I spoke with him on the phone, and I believe that he was happy with the results because he had asked that we reduce his fine, and we did do that. So I pretty much have already said these things. Everything in the proposal in front of you, there is the annual registration. When we talked in December, we had suggested a possible fee with that. There is not a fee associated with it. However, because of the necessity to obtain that information, that current information, there is a fee that is being suggested if they fail to register. Then maybe we come back and there'll be a fee assigned to that. There is an escalating fee structure in accordance with Texas statute in there. There is a false alarm school required, and there is an administrative review. Oops. So in closing, I just wanted to revisit the reason for the revision is it's intended to encourage the alarm users to avoid false alarms. It's really for them to help us. And in turn, how they benefit from that is if we're not responding to these 3,000 plus alarm calls a year, that allows us to do some of the other things that we're being paid to do. And then I would assure you that if you were to adopt this tonight, or I guess it has to have a few more readings, but once it was to pass, that we would definitely educate the community, educate the citizens through Facebook and advertisements of the pending changes and why we're wanting to do some of the things that we're doing. And of course, the educational piece would be, there would be links on the city and the PD website.
I have a question on the registration.
Yes, sir.
How is that going to be accomplished? Is it going to be a simple user interface that you can go on the city's website and fill out the form?
There are two ways that we're looking at it, because originally we were looking at just doing everything online, but what do you do with the people that may not, utilize that? So there will be an application that they could come and pick up from the city secretary's office.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I understand we have a motion and a second. I'm against this. I was against it before. I was shocked to see it even coming back to us. And so I'm wondering if we could suspend Robert's rules and see whether anybody else here is against it, and whether there's enough of us against it that it's not even worth discussing or going through some amendments.
Personally, I'd like to talk a little more. I have some comments, but
Okay.
In other words, I think the discussion might change minds. I don't know. I could be wrong.
So when I sat down with the chief, I was against the registration or the permit at that time, is what it was a permit. I felt that as a alarm owner, it was just a tax on me to have an alarm that's supposed to help things out. And I didn't find it fair. So we came to the compromise. I understand that the registration is important for them to be able to contact people to make sure that we get their alarms in good working order. You can imagine a national chain restaurant here that has their alarm system registered with whatever company, and they have it listed to call the corporate office instead of the manager. You want the person to contact in the city, and if that manager changes every 6-9 months, what if there was a true issue there in the middle of the night? You don't know who to call. There may not be anybody at the main office to answer a call or to deal with something locally. And the corporate office, until HR is open the next day, may not know how to deal with any problems. So there's some instances where the registration really makes sense and allows the police department to do their job. It was not my first choice to have it in there, but I think we came to a good compromise. And as I told Chief, I said neither of us got exactly what we wanted out of this proposal, and in that manner, I felt like it was a fair negotiation, if you will. And I didn't get rid of the registration because I realized you couldn't without stripping everything that they're trying to do. Chief Craig also relayed a story to me when he was in Long Beach, same complacency issue, because they had continually gone to another business that was always getting false alarms. So the police that responded just, it's just another false alarm. Let's walk the building. Ended up getting shot in his finger because there was a perpetrator, but they weren't on guard and ready to be there for the right reason. They were just there because it'd been another false alarm. So I definitely think that there's some benefit in this so that we can protect our officers and make sure that they start feeling like when they respond to an alarm that it really is an alarm and it's not just the cry wolf syndrome. And for that I saw benefit in going to this and trying reducing these false alarms.
I'm not against trying to reduce false alarms. I think that's excellent. But I don't think that this is addressing it. It's what we struggled with before. If we need some education, I'm all in favor of that. If we want to put some type of a fine structure in there for false alarms, we can take a look at that. But if the registration is online, I'm not convinced that people aren't just going to say, yes, nothing's changed from last year. The corporate companies that may not have the right information in there. I'm just not convinced that this, and especially the registration, the requirement of registration, the fine if you don't register, I don't see how any of that is going to address stopping the false alarms. I think that the education process is necessary, but I'm not seeing it as coming from the fact that you did or didn't register.
I just think at the end of the day, they don't know who to contact.
I'm gonna have to agree with Mr. Bachnight. Mr. Jamison did an excellent job in defining and outlining all the issues and problems and how it's gonna correct the issues and problems and how we're gonna benefit from it. And it could actually save an officer's life. I'm all for this, 110%.
I would also, if council ends up supporting the registration and the ordinance is amended, I would encourage the police department to come back with reports and show the numbers of decrease. I won't be here to offer that, but the chief can make a note and bring back a report on how successful or not. And I know often the mayor and I talk about, we write these ordinances, but it doesn't mean you can't go back and change the ordinances later if for whatever reason it's not being successful. So it's our job to help monitor that.
So before you was placed an updated ordinance that struck through where it read permit and went into registration and described that. And I think we caught all the permit verbiage that's in there to change it to a registration instead of calling it a permit. Like your registration cannot be transferred to another person or alarm site. You got to go back and just re-register. It's not cost. It's just a little time to do it. So you're not taxing someone for having an alarm. And it describes through there that registration form and how to do it. I can go through these one by one in a proposed amendment, or if it pleases everyone, I could submit this document as a motion to amend and go forward with it so we can discuss
You
it.
could also break this out, instead of it being a second and third, you could break it out and it just be the second, and we could bring the third reading back at the next meeting if council so chose to, so they would have time to review it.
I would be in favor of that. Would this just hand it to me minutes before the meeting? Haven't been able to really look through it real well.
So we'll
I
make
feel
this-
personally a little better about it, being able to read through this, seeing what all it entails.
So would y'all, it'd be okay, then I'll make two motions. First, I move that we amend the ordinance C2 from what is presented in our packets to the handout with the red lines.
I second the motion. That was my one concern, was I had read permit and registration, and I said, wait a minute, this is not, and I even told him just when we walked in, I said, there's something not coming out together. And I'm glad that, he said, well, there's a new language on there. So I second the motion.
Okay, let's talk about that first. With respect to the one you handed out is different from the one in the packet.
Right.
Yes. And I'm sorry if I seem confused, but in the packet, I just thought it was interesting. What's lined out, annual fee for connection of alarm systems to central alarm system, $500. When was the last time that occurred? Does anybody remember?
It was long before my time, sir.
So that was probably before
More than
90.
23 years ago.
No one here would know. So that's still in the code?
It
Still
is.
in the ordinance?
Yes,
So people paid $500, that's annually, to connect, and that was a little light went off down in dispatch and that.
Yes.
Well, that's technology, I understand. I just think that's interesting that, I guess it was just a different time. And I'm bringing that up to compare contrast to the fact that people view this as some sort of tax. We don't want to collect any false alarm fees. I want none, I want everybody not to have any false alarms. I mean, this is not about revenue or making money for the city.
Oh, and I might add, as security systems become less expensive, you're going to see more of them installed in homes. So that the number is going to increase. So it would be good for us to try to get a handle on this now because it's going to become a much bigger problem down the road.
Well, they're cheaper and they're smarter. Just bought 3 of them for one building. I didn't put it up. Don't even know what the heck. I do know it makes phone calls. That's the only thing I asked my business partner, and it does. I think we can put in to call us. It won't call you guys. We'll call you if we need you.
Is it monitored?
No, it connects via Wi-Fi. So it
But
has
is it monitored by a third party?
No, but it has a SIM card, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, so
to
it's
make
just going
calls.
to contact you.
Right. So you're going to see that. Those were cheap
Now,
or
would that-
inexpensive.
Would that be
So-
subject to this ordinance?
No, it doesn't contact them.
We're not responding, no.
So that would not be
This is
subject to it?
just, this isn't private alarms. This is just alarms that are monitored by a third party that gets the signal. And then they call they're supposed to make 2 calls to the alarm user, 2 different numbers. And when they don't get a hold of anybody, then they call the police.
And where will this database be maintained and how will it be maintained?
Well, I would assume it would be on our city server. So it would be maintained just like all the offenses and everything else that are put on there. As far as if you're concerned about as to who would have access to it, it would only be the administrators and some of the people that do the data entry.
Of course, I want people to know I have an alarm. That's why I have stickers on my windows and whatnot. Stay out, so.
Okay, if we vote for this, how soon do we have to register? Assuming that you have a third party, that's doing the monitoring? Are you gonna say 30 days, 60 days? How many days do?
I'm not
Okay,
real sure what
registration,
your
because
question is.
we're having to register, right?
Right.
Okay, if we vote today and it passes, how many days do we, the citizens, have to go and register?
When we originally had put this proposal together, we did it prior to the beginning of the new year, and we were looking at after the first of the year.
Right.
If this passes, we're going to need to rethink that. We probably need to look at least a 6-month window, 3 to 6 month window, in order to educate the citizens as to what those changes are.
And have we
And we
thought
can-
about if,
sorry.
once you get off the alarm system, if you decide, okay, let's go private, what would, you have a time limit that we have to call into? Because you're gonna have us registered, but then we went private instead of with a third party.
Right. If you no longer have a monitored service, say you disconnect your alarm system, there's no need to let us know because we're not going to be responding to your location anymore.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to let you know.
And it's a registration annually?
Yes, ma'am.
So you just wouldn't register the next
Correct.
time?
But just to be clear, like mine, I would not register. They're not monitored.
Right.
They will make
That
phone
is
calls
correct.
to me, or I'll,
Right.
someone
It's
else's
not
phone
garnering
number.
a law enforcement response.
Right, and those are most of what I see in the residential growth is those non-monitored type.
Correct.
Because of their price. And I expect that to change, technology change me more in the next few years, so, anyway. Okay, so we have a motion to amend for the original to reflect this language, that was handed out? Is there?
I also move to amend my amendment to include striking of the fees, which I forgot to say a while ago, the alarm system permit fees, strike that, the alarm system annual renewal fee for $50, and the late fee after 30 days for $25.
Wait, slow down, let's see, what page you on there?
I'm on page 1 of 2.
In the ordinance itself, within the packet, the page that is labeled C2 at the top,
Yep.
in the middle of the page, there were some
Bolded.
fees related to the permit, but since he's changing from a permit to a registration, those are no longer necessary.
Okay.
Okay, so you
I
have,
have to see a
Councilman Bogdan,
final
I would-
version on that before I could even support anything. You have too many changes too quickly, and we haven't had time to go review it, so, no.
where
These right
are
here.
the numbers? Show me the numbers you're talking
No,
about.
I read through all
No,
that.
no, these here.
I went through that. That's another.
right
Yeah.
there.
Okay,
saying.
these,
Yeah,
yeah,
right there.
yeah.
That's 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the motion to amend. Is that right?
The word is
Sorry for
And
that.
you want to, that's okay. I didn't know if we do one at a time. In a second, we got, okay, Ricky. So what you're doing, in the packet on the C2, the page with the tab, guys, those three, alarm system permit fee of $50, renewal fee 50, you want to strike all three of those,
Yes, sir.
because they're not needed.
So this is not a rewrite, so we're having to look at both of these.
That's what I was confused by. I thought it was a rewrite. It's not. So we're gonna require registration, but no registration fee? Am I confused? We're just striking the fees,
Correct.
but the only fees remaining will be the late fees, or the,
Punitive.
excuse me, the, false alarm fees. Okay. So you will not be charged to register,
False alarm and re-hookup fees
okay.
and late fees for.
But I just want to be real clear here, to get a permit, just to let the police department know that you have an alarm and it's gonna call them, costs nothing,
Registration.
right?
Registration, not
Registration.
That's
permit.
what's proposed, registration, thank you. That's what's proposed. It costs nothing to register your alarm system.
Correct.
The only fees in this are,
Thank you for that work, Councilman Bachnight.
yeah.
I had an issue with the punitive thing for not doing anything wrong, so I appreciate your work and with the chief.
Okay, so a motion and a second to strike the fees. Any further discussion on that issue? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute, there is further discussion. We're gonna
Okay.
strike the fees to set up the system?
I'm sorry?
We're not gonna require a permit fee. And we're
Nope.
setting up a whole new system.
That should be relatively inexpensive, in my mind. Okay.
Call for the vote?
You clear? All right. I think I did already. Just do it again, Mr. Attorney. All right. Don't cause no problems. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same?
Aye.
Okay. So the motion to amend passed. Now we're on the motion to amend the original C2 with this modified C2. Is there any discussion about this?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Clarify, so this is not, since we just took that out, but it's not in this one. These two have to be read together. There's parts of what's in the packet and parts of this.
Yes, let me address that part of it. Probably the easiest way to understand what is being proposed now is this substitution that shows some red line changes is what he is proposing that the existing code would read after this gets adopted. There were some additional fines that are not contained in this section of the code. Excuse me, I said fines, permit fees. And so those will also be struck from what staff had originally proposed, if this amendment is approved.
You're dealing with two different code sections, chapter 24 versus chapter 15, and the
Right.
fees are in 24.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion?
There's a little typo on the last page of this. One of the red registration isn't spelled right.
Yeah, sure isn't. That's about as bad as my spelling.
Registrating.
Registrating.
Registering.
Wow. Okay, good catch.
So hopefully that can be fixed before the third reading.
Yes, ma'am. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same?
Aye.
Okay. Now, we still have the original motion from a couple weeks ago, don't we?
That's correct. That amends the ordinance that is being proposed tonight. So we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance as amended. And if there is a desire to split the second and third readings, now is the time to do that.
Y'all want to split them?
I do.
So that would be a motion.
I want ample time for everybody to review this that was put in front of them tonight to make sure that they feel comfortable with it.
Okay. Did you had to make a motion to do that? We don't have to do. I thought we'd just bring it back. There's the third.
Yeah, the second, third, you split.
I don't recall ever having to do that.
You know, you got me stumped there. There's not
don't
actually a
recall.
procedure in Robert's Rules. That's something in our local ordinance that says that we can combine them, but there's not a requirement. So yes, I think you're right. We can just simply say by consensus, this will be the second reading and not the third
And
reading.
put it on again for third.
And so council is, if you vote on it tonight, you're passing it to the third reading.
Even though the agenda calls this the first reading.
First.
Oh, that's true.
Yes, you're
Because it
right.
was open from last
Because it
time.
was tabled last time. My goodness.
So we can leave it the
You're
second
right.
and
So there
third.
will be a second and third reading in the future, one way or the other.
Okay, we're gonna see it again. And y'all
Yes.
can talk about it if y'all want. Okay, very good. No further discussion? I just want, again, to clarify, there are no fees. We're
Gotten
asking
pretty convoluted.
people to register, just to let us know they have an alarm system that's gonna call PD so that we know who to contact, so that, we're not wasting officer time. It's a lot of calls, and this is a priority call. They have to leave what they're doing to do this, so we're not trying to be punitive or make things difficult for people, but, we gotta work smart, so I appreciate PD for bringing this to us and being patient with us while we, work this through, and so we all understand it. So, thank you.
And in the bottom line, sometimes we have to put a little bit of money into a system to get people's attention. Now, if I pull you over and I say, gee, you shouldn't be driving so fast, don't do that, and they'll just keep doing it and continue. The fine is really a method of getting people to do what they should be doing.
But there's still fines.
Fines.
There's still fines.
Yeah, I understand.
There's just no
But there's
fees.
also, we're creating a system, and you're taking money that, it should be some self-supporting to it. And that's why I would like to stay with a registration fee. But yes, it does need to be registered, because we need to know who is a problem child. And again, it would help identify that.
For clarification, is there already a false alarm fine in state law? Isn't that what they've been telling us that there is?
This
It's
state
in our
law-
city ordinance.
Yeah, the state law allows the city to adopt a fine if we go through this process. But I don't believe that the state law establishes a fine on its own.
Okay.
Okay, we're all clear. And again, we'll see, don't laugh. We'll see it again at our next meeting.
I'm
so.
gonna have to think about it a lot.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, council. Let's see, that was C2. Let's see where we are here.
Bottom of the first page.
The consent agenda?
Yes, we're to the consent agenda
Well,
now.
let's do D2 that Ms. Solis pulled.
Let's do D2 first then, an ordinance amending fiscal year 2018-19 City of Victoria Water Wastewater Fund budget to provide funding in the amount of $1,432,641 for the relocation of a 16-inch water line in US Highway 59 North from Loop 463 to Hill Road as part of the US Highway 59 North Frontage Road Phase 2 project, providing for savings and declaring an effective date. This is a second and third reading.
So moved.
Second.
My only question was, is this in addition to the $674,701 that, okay. I just wanted to make sure that it was.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
It is.
that's fine. I wasn't here last time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
You
you.
had that number down to the dollar.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
impressed.
Oh, I have to ask one more question, and this is for Thomas.
Sure.
My brother's running this project. Can I vote?
Uh-oh.
The facts necessary for me to answer that question are more detailed than we could probably go over here right now without me having a
Should
personal
I just
conversation. I
recuse
would
me?
recommend that you just simply abstain from voting to be on the safe side.
Okay, that, I was thinking,
I bet it passes.
well, I'm sure it'll pass, but, you
Yes,
know.
ma'am. No, I know, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same? Okay, thank you, thank you. We'll do the rest of the consent agenda now.
Sure. Item D1 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 19th, 2019. D3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding with the University of Houston Victoria to allow the campus police officer continued access to the city's 800 megahertz public safety radio system and declaring an effective date. Item D4 is an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of the Victoria City Code to update requirements pertaining to utilities and game rooms, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for publication, enforcement, codification, and savings, and declaring an effective date. And D5 is a resolution awarding the relocation of a water line in the Highway 59 North right-of-way from Loop 463 to Hill Road as part of the U.S. Highway 59 North Frontage Road Phase 2 project to SER Construction Partners, LLC, for their bid of $1,432,641, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the project and declaring an effective date.
I move to adopt.
Second.
Okay.
I'm going to recuse myself again.
Okay. Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, ayes have it. E1.
Item E1 is a resolution appointing and reappointing members to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. April, did you want to comment? Anything you need to?
On this one, I think. I don't really have a report on this one. We only had Mr. Martinez agreed to be reappointed. I spoke with Mr. De La Garza about James Weirden, and he agreed to ask him again to be reappointed. And Mr. Lukemeyer applied for that third position. And then we had an additional position open because of Raleigh McCoy's resignation. So Patrick Ort, another architect, agreed to take that position if we so choose to appoint him.
Okay.
With a thank you and welcome to people that are willing to step up and take positions.
Okay. What discussion? Is there any, and I'm a little caught off guard on this one, I have to admit. We're ready to vote on it as I read it?
There's 2 vacancies and 2 people that are willing to serve.
Yeah, do we need to vote on between the 2 willing to serve? Because there's 3
No,
positions?
it's
All 4?
it's an even up. You're okay.
Oh, okay,
Just-
even up.
just
I'm sorry.
Vote to adopt.
That's,
you're
thank you
okay.
for squaring me away
Oh,
here.
you're welcome.
No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you.
You just have to put up with me 3 more meetings.
No, I didn't look at that one close enough.
Item E2 is a resolution reappointing John McNeil as the Health Authority for the Victoria County Public Health Department to enforce state and local laws relating to public health and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second. Nobody certainly wants to argue about Dr. McNeil, I'd imagine. He's done a good job for us.
Done a fantastic job.
Yes, he has. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Ayes have it.
Item E3 is a resolution reappointing 1 current member and appointing 1 new member of the Victoria County Public Health Department Board of Health and declaring an effective date.
Second.
A motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, ayes have it. Moving along.
E4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to initiate annexation proceedings, develop an annexation service plan, offer and enter into annexation development agreements with ag-exempt property owners for the proposed annexation of approximately 74 acres of land near the intersection of Salem Road and the planned extension of Placido Benavides Drive, and declaring an effective date.
I move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any questions? This is the last property that we have to do this with because there were so many owners. No questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you.
Item E5 is a resolution waiving building permit fees for the Victoria Affordable Housing Corporation No. 2 North Street Apartment Rehabilitation Project for property located at 1109 East North Street and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions?
If you don't mind, I'd just like to point out some individuals in the audience that were very instrumental in this project coming to fruition. We have Dolly Stokes with United Way, as well as Brandy Hillbrook and Robert Kudelka with the Victoria Housing Authority No. 2. And then we also have some development services staff. But as you can see from the CM1, that there was a lot of different partners in this project, with the funding coming from Caterpillar Foundation, funneled through United Way, as well as Waste Management donating some a dumpster fee, and then Republic Services donating tipping fees. And then if we, of course, choose to participate with our building service permit waiver, or building permit fee waivers. So I just wanted to recognize all those individuals.
Julie, would you explain a little bit about how this helps for affordable rental housing for?
Sure. So as the background stated, Caterpillar Foundation granted United Way with approximately $500,000. And as a result, United Way formed a committee with various organizations to look at all the different ways we could spend that money and what would have the most lasting impact. We looked at revolving loans, giving people individual assistance to rehab houses, looking at maybe building houses with Habitat Humanity. There was quite a few options that were discussed, and the most lasting impact seemed to provide affordable rental housing through multifamily units. The Victoria Housing Authority number 2 had a dilapidated set of apartments at 1109 East North Street that had actually been partially vacated even before the hurricane, and then received further damage of the hurricane. There was a lot of foundation problems, and so their board was actively looking at maybe selling the property, which we had concerns that if it was sold to a new property owner, they may continue to rent it without doing the necessary rehab and provide, more housing that was undesirable. And so that's really a big part of why we looked at what it would be to rehab, especially with the limited $500,000 is a lot of money, but it only goes so far. And so we settled on the rehab of these apartments. So what it does is it provides 12 units that will be perpetually available for low-income individuals. They will also accept Section 8 housing vouchers.
Thank you. I just wanted that for the public.
So it's owned by the Housing Authority. The property is owned by the Housing Authority.
Yes,
Okay.
one of their affiliates. They have a couple different nonprofit arms.
Okay.
But you've been able to find a tangible way that the municipality can assist by waiving these fees. And so
yes,
I want to thank you for bringing it to our attention as something that we can do.
And we always provide technical assistance whenever we can on these type of projects.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't want to diminish all the other assistance that you give.
You said something that this property is owned by the Housing Authority. You said it's affiliates? What is
So
it?
the Victoria Housing Authority, and I may need Brandy to come up and explain more, they are sort of, I guess a government entity. They have different regulations on how much they can own property, and so there's the Victoria Housing Corporation number 1 and the Victoria Housing Corporation number 2, and they're all nonprofit boards. And I'm not sure
There's no private
legal
ownership.
No.
Okay, I just want to make
sorry.
100% clear. We're not.
Yes.
No one private is being the recipient. Okay.
It's the same entity, essentially different legal frameworks.
I echo Dr. Young's comments. I appreciate you helping everybody navigate all the. This is not easy, and it's Caterpillar, their generosity, and they're such a wonderful part of this community. So big thanks to those guys.
It was a true partnership. There was a lot of people involved.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you.
Item E6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for and, if awarded, accept funding for the 2019 Homeland Security Grant Program in the amount of $59,950 with no requirement for matching city funds for hazardous materials, chemical identification device, hazmat ID used by the Victoria Fire Department, and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
All right. So the other one is, the other piece of equipment's over 10 years old, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Good job of getting a little tiny bit, 1/1000% of our federal taxes back to us. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So,
I just have one question. It seems like the deadline on the application itself is 2/28/19. Did we get an extension or something?
No, the application was submitted, and if, council doesn't approve, we can always retract that application.
Okay.
So the application was submitted on time.
Okay, good.
I don't think I got a motion, did I? Did y'all?
Yes, we did.
We did, okay.
Yeah, Ricky did. the first
Yes,
time.
you did. You were so fast
Yes,
on the.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
on the draw.
Your kindred spirits there. The fire department. Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you, chief.
E7 is an ordinance adding Article 4 to Chapter 22 of the Victoria City Code to regulate the use of golf carts and neighborhood vehicles on city streets, providing for publication, enforcement, codification, and savings, and declaring an effective date. This is a second and third reading.
Make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Mayor and council staff would like to propose an amendment to this ordinance. I would request a council member to make a motion to amend. I put a document in front of you each that is labeled E7 at the top and has some highlighted language in the middle paragraph. The point of this proposed amendment would be to allow the use of golf carts during parades and other events either organized or sponsored by the city of Victoria. After this ordinance had been drafted, the city manager recognized the fact that this would not cover Boot Fest and other events like Christmas on the Square or the Lighted Christmas Parade, during which time the city itself uses golf carts. And so we are seeking to add an amendment to this ordinance that would carve out an additional exception to allow the use of golf carts not only by the city, but by other entities who are operating city-sponsored or city-organized events or under a permit for a parade.
I move.
I was going to say, I would also like to amend what I brought forth, if that's possible.
Add them both together.
There's been brought to my attention with the golf carts in their max speed of 25, driving on some of the streets that go 35, it can pose a hazard. And so I would like to amend in section 22.8.1 under A, for golf carts specifically, that they can be driven on streets 30 miles per hour or less.
As opposed to 35, the way it's
Correct.
currently drafted.
And I think that that keeps more with the spirit that I was looking for, that they become neighborhood-type vehicles versus thoroughfare type of vehicles.
As long as we don't keep getting, hey, can you lower this speed limit on this stretch so I can?
Councilman Young, before you get a second to that motion, can I ask
If you would like to live in front of a
question?
school and.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Within paragraph C, there's also the requirement that a golf cart cannot drive across a street that has a speed limit of 35. Do you
Correct,
mean
I don't wanna
lower
change that.
Okay, just for clarity's sake, we're not changing that one.
Did you say you did or did not?
I did not want to change the intersection, crossing an intersection, but the actual, the road that you're traveling down.
So if I understand your motion correctly, before we get a second on that motion, is a motion to expand it to include the the parade revision that staff is proposing.
Correct.
As well as
Thank
to
you.
make the change
Okay.
in 2281.
I did want to add that as well, thank you.
Okay, changing that to 30.
So that is a motion.
Okay,
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to amend E7 as just discussed. Any discussion about the motion to amend? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same? Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're back on the motion of E7 itself. Any discussion? If not, I'll ask for just while we're here, clarification. So these people have to be licensed drivers to have a normal Texas driver's license to operate these. You have to have seat belts.
That's correct.
You have to have lights.
In a neighborhood electric vehicle, yes.
Okay. There's a lot of,
Yes.
misinformation out there. Imagine that.
It does prohibit driving golf carts at night in the ordinance, I believe,
Yes.
Thomas.
I'm flipping here. I think golf carts are required to have headlights as well. Yes, they are, but they're not required to have the brake lights and some other, like turn signals.
It
The
doesn't
neighborhood
say,
vehicles are required to have those. There is a distinction between the two.
it also doesn't say seat belts under 2282.
Not for
Golf
golf
carts.
carts.
Not for neighborhood.
But in the discussion that was just a minute ago, the statement was made, they have to
Neighborhood
have
vehicles do have to
neighborhood
have.
vehicles,
Right.
but not
That's-
golf carts.
And that's in accordance with state law.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure that we're clear about that, though.
Yeah. I can't help but think in 30, 40 years, cars get smaller and all this stuff just kind of blends together. You used to know, it was very clearly understood what a golf cart was. It's what you use on the golf course, but not anymore.
Right.
There's so many types of vehicles, so, okay. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same? Okay, thank you. E8.
E8 is a resolution granting a variance to Section 13-60 of the Victoria City Code, which prohibits the drilling, construction, repair, correction, abandonment, or plugging of a water well within the city limits for property located at 2701 Hospital Drive, owned by Citizens Medical Center, and declaring an effective date.
Second. All right. Did you make it?
Come-
No.
Yeah.
Didn't come out right. I heard
It
part
didn't
of
come
it.
out, so, yeah.
So we have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
This is what we did for DTAR and now Citizens, and it's, you
And
know,
this is not for potable water, it's for cooling water, processed water flow only.
yep. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none? See how easy that was? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you.
E9 is a resolution awarding the One Lynn Street Rehabilitation Overlay Project to Brandon Paving Company Limited for their low bid of $391,769.45, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the project and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay.
Daryl Donald may be gone more.
Good job.
Let you handle everything.
Good. Okay. Where are we at here? Is that the end of our
City
items?
manager's
City
report.
managers' reports.
And there's 6 of those, and April has the first one on her report.
Okay, let's go.
This report is to consider 2 appointments to the Building and Standards Commission. Mr. Raleigh McCoy and Bobby Thomas both resigned. And we have 3 applications to fill those 2 vacancies with Linda Rosenquist, Craig Logger, and Dean Rayburn Sahala. I probably said that wrong, I apologize. They have all submitted applications to be considered for that Building and Standards Commission, so the resolution will be brought before the council at the next meeting. We ought to consider which of the 3 you want to appoint to the 2 positions available.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Julie?
Okay, Julie's going to give us an update on 111 South De Leon.
So as y'all may remember, the property owner of 1111 South De Leon came before council 6 months ago and requested an extension of his Building Standards Commission order, which was issued in July of 2018. He asked for a stay in the demolition of his property so that he could bring it into compliance with the minimum building standards, so that order could go back before the Building Standards Commission and be rescinded. This is just an update that no work has been done at this point. The order expired yesterday, so we have solicited bids and are ready to move forward with the demolition if that is what council wishes for us to do.
And Julie, just for clarification, when you say no work's been done, I do believe he demoed a small lean-to attachment or something.
Yes, yes, you're right. There was a small lean-to that was demoed, but as far as work to bring it into compliance with the minimum standards, the property is in the floodplain, so we did look. We've been talking a lot about the roof and the roof failing, but there's other structural issues with the property. There's several broken concrete piers. There needs to also be the realignment of several concrete piers under load-bearing beams. There's quite a bit of either deteriorated wood with drywall termite damage that must be removed and replaced between the foundation as well as the several portions of the walls. And then there's damage to the different openings, windows, and doors. So all of this combined does require that the property be raised because it is in the floodplain. So we believe that all of those things may be obstacles to why he wasn't able to get the work done in the 6 months.
And you don't really need anything from us. This is more informational. We gave an extension, council, and then if you read the packet, the demolition bids are in place for y'all to just move forward. Now, you do have an email he sent.
I was going to share that.
Which was a bit confusing at best, but.
I have a question. Would this structure qualify under that CDBG program for buyout?
It is in the floodplain. I guess the question would have to be whether it received damage from Harvey or whether the damage was there before Harvey.
Because this process started in 2011. But, but
I don't know who would make that determination. If it, I guess,
Do you have pictures from
GLO.
2011?
Does this CDBG program we talked about earlier have to be because of damage received in Harvey? Or is it the fact that it's in a FEMA floodplain?
Has to be both.
Has to be
Property
both?
has to be in the floodplain or floodway, and it must have received damage during Harvey.
Is there amount of damage?
No. It's not substantial damage, it's not flood damage, it's storm damage caused by Harvey.
But the buyout amount would be the pre-Harvey, and we already have all the history of the condition that it was in pre-Harvey.
Correct, pre-Harvey.
So it would have some value, but
Market
not.
value.
So do we have evidence that this property was in poor condition before Harvey?
It's definitely been in a deteriorated state back since 1998 when we pulled the floodplain or the flood of '98 records. As far as how much deterioration between then and now, I don't know that we have complete records, but we definitely have periodic records along the way with photographs showing it in a deteriorated state.
Well, in 2011 was when he was ordered to board the property up.
So we have evidence.
That was 2011.
Couldn't the owner make the argument that while it was in poor condition, it still received damage from Harvey and it is in a floodplain, and therefore I'd like to keep it until this program gets fleshed out?
it has to make an appeal to the boards, and that group, and then I guess it has to come back to us, right? What is the building standards?
Yeah, I mean, the building standards order issued it to be demolished within 30 days, and that was ordered back in July. So I guess council would have the authority to extend another extension. I don't know the time frame for the buyout program.
Well, the buyout, and I'll remind you, the
Right.
buyout program, that's federal money, so yeah, we could be here 10 years from now. You know, I mean, come on, it's been 2 years since a hurricane, and we still don't even have this stuff from the feds.
The structural value from the appraisal district for 2018 is $3,340. Other than the years 2014 through 2016, which there was an appraised value of approximately $18,000. All the years prior to that and after that, it has ranged from $2,000 to a high of $5,300.
It's a more general question on this, and this may not be the only one. If we're seeking to demolish a building that's in one of these impacted areas, and it's gonna be part of a buyout program, I don't know the answer to it. I'm just posing the question of what.
Well, those are gonna require the residents or owners to apply, I would imagine, and it would be incumbent upon this gentleman to do so, to apply for it. Now, if you're asking whether staff should tell him and inform him, and then for council here to say, well, let's leave it and wait for that program to open whenever it does, that's where we're headed with this discussion then, right?
Are the guidelines owner occupied?
Well, that's what I was just about to say. I think our past
It's not.
guidelines.
It hadn't been occupied in 20 years, I don't think.
Right, it's a determination that the city council will make in our application to whether we open it up to rental properties or just owner occupied, but it's the fact that it's been vacant for as long as it has been, I don't know how that would fall out in the GLO guidelines. But the question about abandoned and or potentially demolished structures in the floodplain is a good one for us to broach with Grant Works about. We may run into that situation again, and we need to know how the buyout program would interact with that situation.
So from what I hear, it looks like we're moving towards owner-occupied residences. This isn't an owner-occupied structure that they had to move out because of storm damage from a hurricane.
Right.
And therefore would not be eligible for this buyout program that's going through the
way
process
we
right
envision
now.
it today.
Okay.
Is Mr. Bennett the registered owner of this property? Okay.
Through the appraisal district, we did not run, I don't have title data on that.
You been over there recently, Mr. Halapask? Have you been to the house?
Yeah.
I would like to point out, though, as I told Mr. Bennett I would do, he did send me, Thomas, and Dr. Young an email today asking for postponement of any action until he could meet with, he wants to meet with the city manager, Dr. Young, Julie, and a member of his advisory team. So that's his ask today. And you have that email in front of you.
I think at some point we also have to think about the neighbors and the value of the property of the neighborhood. I mean, we all get calls from citizens asking us to, what can you do about the condition of my neighbor's home? What can you do about the junk in my neighbor's yard? What can you do about this sort of thing? You know, I don't want us to just look at this property in a vacuum. It's certainly had quite a bit of process and quite a bit of timing.
Okay. Council, do y'all want to leave this as is and let them proceed with the demolition order?
Can I clarify something? If we did proceed with demolition, who's the ownership of the land go to?
It's still his, I believe.
Still his.
That's correct.
So most
As long
likely,
as
he
he's-
won't get anything for the house anyway, just for the lot, if he proceeds with the buyout program,
As long as
correct?
he's paying taxes, yes.
There wouldn't be a buyout at that point, I don't think, so it wouldn't
Nothing
be
to
a
buy. I
house.
I think it'll
wouldn't be bought out.
qualify.
Right.
Likewise, there may be a lien on the property for the demolition costs at that point as well.
True. Now, as far as the meeting, though, okay, wait a minute, let's stop. Is there general consensus to stick with our original decision here? This has gone on for years. You okay with that?
I'm fine with it.
I am.
We put a
Okay.
stay of demolition on for a period of time, and we've got to pull the trigger sometime.
Now, there's a question of a meeting. Do y'all want to direct the city manager to have a meeting or set a date and time and see if he shows up? He hadn't showed up to some of the meetings, as I understand it, in other times, so.
If we go forward tonight, if we approve it, then there won't be a need for that meeting.
That's correct.
Okay,
He's
then we don't
just-
need to
I'm
make
just
that
gonna,
decision.
I'm really struggling with it because I know his grandmother very well, or knew his grandmother, and I'm having a hard time with it from an emotional perspective, but it's hard to get that engineering part in my brain going right now and go through it from a logical perspective, so.
Yeah,
That we go to the meeting and just give them that one chance. Just at one time, just one more time, and that's it. And inform him of the buyout
So
to see if maybe,
I don't think it'll qualify, though, for the buyout. That's what I wanted to explore, and because it's not an owner-occupied residence.
Doesn't live here.
Would you want to extend the 6-month stay for another month to let there be a meeting?
yes,
And if there's no meeting,
then you
a
can go,
month is a month,
yes.
but they give them that
Yeah,
time
I mean,
to.
he had the courtesy of sending an email at least. He knew we were meeting today, so, you know, and he is right, the weather has been, you know, to where you can't do anything, even if he
He
wanted
had a
to.
list of things he was
Well-
going to do, and he didn't.
not since, the weather hadn't been that bad since 2011. No disrespect,
Oh, well,
Ms.
I know
Solis,
that.
but this
Yeah, I
has
know,
gone
but
on forever, but we can,
Since we got wind of it.
I know, it's gone on forever. If y'all
What's the
want,
recommendation?
if, that's what
30 days.
I'm hearing. Who wants to do an additional month?
30 days for the meeting.
I'll support 30 days.
I'll
30
support
days for
30
the-
days.
One of you over here? Okay.
That's fine, I'll be
And you
happy.
can email him and tell him,
Doesn't
and,
change.
you know, what I would suggest, ask him to set the date of a meeting, you know, so we can't come back and forth with this. He doesn't show up, which has
Sure.
happened numerous times already. So, okay, so let's move past this issue then. We've given you what you need to go forward.
Absolutely, thank
All
you.
right.
So the next three items are annual reports that we do this time of year, and the first one is Dana with the library. And I believe her handout is at your dais, at your place.
The one with all the colors.
Yes, absolutely, that's the library.
That's correct.
They're colorful.
Rainbow.
All right, good evening, council. I wanted to give you a report that is an overview of how our community has used Victoria Public Library and our services in 2018. 2018 for us was a continued year of transition for our community.
as we continue to recover and pull together following Hurricane Harvey. We saw this as the usage of library services continued to slowly grow over the year. We had a slow start, and then we saw growth in several different areas and strong continued support of new programs and events at the library. It was also a year of reconstruction as hurricane repairs were completed and we continued rebuilding and redefining the services and programs we offer. Our tagline at the library is where the journey begins. And it is the journey begins for all who walk through our doors or enter the library through our website. Our resources provide opportunities for connection to the world of ideas and to others in our community. And it is where the journey begins for those who are looking to continue learning and make life improvements. It is also the journey begins for those who are looking for no-cost family entertainment. We support all of these endeavors and measure our effectiveness through our strategic plan and our continued use of community conversations. The community conversations are where we meet with small groups, and we like to hear about what they like about their community and their concerns and things they wish to see changed and improved in their community. I wanted to give you just some numbers here on the next few slides to show you what was occurring in 2018. We had a little over 198,000 visits during fiscal year 2018. We currently have a little over 42,000 card holders. And during that year, we offered 505 programs, and 22,000 people attended these events. On the materials side, we had 352,000 total checkouts of library materials. I broke that down for you so you could see 327,000 of those were physical materials, 24,000 were digital materials. Those are available through our website for download. And then on the technology side, we had a little over 85,000 website visits, 70,000 public computer sessions in our building, so the public computers were used in the building that year. We have a little over 3,500 Facebook page likes, and we also offer public Wi-Fi. We had almost 30,000 connections to public Wi-Fi during the year. Moving on, as I mentioned at the beginning, we did complete some hurricane damage repairs. In April, our carpeting was replaced in our meeting room, and that's been completely redone. And then the damaged ceiling in the main library was replaced in September. We also restructured our programming department at the library to include a renewed focus on adult programs and services. And we had our first adult program starting in November, and that was our writers group. That group continues to meet monthly. In 2019, our goals continue to grow our adult programs. We now have a monthly walking book group. We met for the first time in February, and we're meeting again on March the 12th, next week. This group reads a book that we've chosen. We meet over the lunch hour, and we walk through downtown Victoria and discuss the book. We've also started a craft group for adults, and that's mainly crocheters and knitters. They meet 2 evenings a month to work on projects and share their knowledge with each other. We also continue to lead community conversations, and those come up as opportunities and time permits. Our last one was with the Southside Community Group in January, and it really gives us that opportunity to hear from a variety of citizens and learn about what they like about Victoria. So with the heavy use of our building, a number of building improvements are on our long-term facilities plan, including the replacement of the main floor carpeting, addition of a family restroom, and addition of a staff office. We also continue to look for ways to improve our technology and how we connect with our users. So we are starting a multi-year project just assessing our library software system and evaluating what types of systems might meet our needs here in the future. As part of this annual report as well, I wanted to give you an update on our amnesty that we held in January. So during the month of January, we had our amnesty for that whole month, and we had 740 cardholders clear their accounts of fines or return lost items. We issued 257 new cards in January, and we updated information on cards, 551 cards. So we had a total of 808 updated cards during that month. We had 954 lost items in fiscal year 17-18, and 363 lost items were returned in January of 2019. And the total monetary value of those 363 items was $7,423. And this was our first amnesty period that I know of in years, more than 15, 20 years. So we really don't have anything to compare it to, but felt like that it was a success for us. In addition, in response to conversation with council, the patron behavior policy has been condensed down and is now posted next to our main entrance doors. And we are working on the timeline on blocking users' cards so that we can have those done within 24 hours of having an overdue item. And that is my report, annual report and amnesty report. Do you have any other questions I can answer for you?
I'd like to make one comment about the community conversations that Dana participates in. She said it slightly, but when she's out visiting with those groups, they talk about other things besides the library, and so she always brings their concerns back, and in some cases we can quickly answer those concerns and work on them. And some things it takes us a little while, but it's a great resource for staff. And I believe there was another one last night, and I know OC represented the city, and I think Dr. Young was there. So, but again, it's a great conversation for our community, and Dana's the one that started that community conversation idea, and we appreciate that. Wow. She also has staff here tonight, and yes. I see Jessica, and I'm not sure,
yes.
and Sandy are
yes,
back there.
Sandy Thigpen and Jessica Berger are here with me representing the library.
Thank you.
So when you're doing those community talks, you'll let the council member know in that district just so we could attend, or do you not want us to attend?
Well, no, she doesn't. She's not the one sending the invitations out. The Southside group that's formed, they invited Dana to attend, and then they invited. I'm not sure how they go about inviting. So, but if we hear of something, a member of church. Yeah, but if we hear of something in your district, we'll be glad to keep that in mind. Yeah. So.
That'd be a great way to also let people know about the buyout plan and, you know, the comment area time that he's needing. That would be, you know, because those are people that are already interested in the community, so they would have a good say-so.
And I believe Dana has the contact person that's organizing the Southside community. So
I do.
We'll be glad to make sure that they get that information.
Yes.
So I'm confused about the community conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who sets one up?
Well, it's a combination of things. We started out setting those up about 3 or 4 years ago after we were trained by the Harwood Institute on Public Policy. We have trained leaders, and we learn how to kind of lead these conversations. So we did a few. We started out by doing them with like Storytime parents. We did one at West High School with students. We did one at the Senior Citizen Center. We just looked at, and we did one at Christ Kitchen as well. So we looked for opportunities where there's already a group meeting, and we kind of jump in and say, can we come to your already organized meeting and hold a conversation to talk about Victoria, what you like and don't like. With the Southside Community Group, I knew that this meeting was happening already, and I also was able to reach out to the person who established it and said, it sounds like what you're really wanting to do is a community conversation. I have a way in which we can lead that. We have the training, we have the leaders, and can do that for you if you would like us to do that. So that's how I got connected in with that group.
So like your next one, give me an example, or you don't know what the next one will be if someone reaches out to you?
We do it both ways. Either someone can reach out to us, or sometimes we will look for those groups out in the community that are already meeting. For example, Rotary clubs, church groups, like boards.
But the topic is the city, not the library.
Right, but what we're listening for is where does the library fit in to what we're hearing? And we do hear things that help us then develop our strategic plan and develop our goals for the library.
Okay, I struggled with, I don't understand it, and I may not understand it fully yet. And when I read your mission statement, how does it fit in with that? That's what I'm struggling with. But certainly, I suppose, continue. I can ask Dr. Young about the one he attended, I guess. It seems like it would be more an OC's department in this kind of thing, because like the Citizens Academy, I think we should have one of those every 3 times a year. They're awesome. This has some overlap with that to me.
Originally, though, Dana was doing it to help with her strategic planning
That's
process.
correct.
To try to determine what the needs of the community was for the library, and that's kind of how it
That
got
I understand.
started.
That I
Yes.
understand. But
So-
if you're going to talk about streets or police or
But
that's kind of weird.
But Dana's probably not going to talk about streets or police, but
Okay.
she's going to come back to us and say this group is interested in knowing about this, or they have. I know one specifically they wanted to know about a covered transit shelter down at by F.W. Groves.
Yes,
and so
that's correct.
what I did was just turn around and send the information to Lisa at the transit and say, hey, this
Okay.
community's asking for that. So
Right.
I don't.
We also passed on information to the Parks Department that we heard. But one of our missions goals is to help people make connections in the community. And that's one of the things that these community conversations do, is they help groups make connections in the community.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And yeah, just one more thing is, the Southside group was not something Dana started. She
Oh, I understand. No, I
invited
understand.
herself to attend a meeting.
Right.
Thank you, Dana.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Didn't go to the picture.
Thank you.
Saving a little money here.
Thank you, sir.
Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. What was passed out to you just now and what I'll be talking about tonight is the public annual crime report that we compile each year. And I have a PowerPoint that will go along and kind of mirrors the information that's in the report itself. So a lot of the graphs and stuff will also be up on the PowerPoint. But the first part of it, kind of the preamble, the introduction is, this is just our 2018 annual report. And I want to point out a couple of benchmarks. And these are things that I've mentioned to council in the past that are very important in terms of recognizing what's going on in a police organization. So one of the things that I want to point out is last year, 2018, there were 95,276 calls for service during 2018. And the average response time to priority 1 emergency calls for service was 6 minutes and 22 seconds. That 6 minute and 22 seconds is a good number. You'd like to see that obviously on the lower side than higher, but that measures very well with major city areas. So I'm pleased with that number. But that represents the total average for response time for priority 1 calls. 95,276. That's an awful lot of calls in a year, and that's actual responses, not just phone calls to the communication center. But that number tends to be pretty high. It trends right around there most years. So it's indicating that the workload is still there. I'm going to get into the crime numbers here in just a minute. But one of the things I also want to point out, because it's going to be relevant to the discussion tonight, is the way that we capture crime data. And that is 2011, the City of Victoria moved towards national incident-based reporting as opposed to uniform crime reporting. Most agencies for years have used UCR data. And we now use what's called NIVARS. It's a National Incident-Based Reporting System. What's important to remember about those things is that we calculate crime per incident, whereas UCR, some of the data is not captured per incident, or actually is captured per incident, not per victim. And as I give as an example, if there's a shooting that occurs in Victoria and there's 3 victims, that's 3 shootings for us. We count them that way. In other agencies, they would count that as 1 incident, 3 victims, but 1 incident. So this is a true reflection of accurate data. And all agencies, they had until 2019, and I believe they're pushing it back until 2021 before everyone is supposed to be NIVARS compliant. So that is important when you consider some of the numbers that we're going to point out. So the first slide and the first page on your report is the Class 1 crime. Class 1 crime is identified as both violent and property crimes. They're typically, benchmarked with other agencies throughout the state and throughout the country, and they all have to basically, in a year end, report these numbers. Some of the crime classes haven't really changed much. I mean, murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, those are your violent crime categories. Burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft represent your property crime categories. And as you can see, we did see an increase in every one of the violent crime categories. Murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault all saw some increase over the past year. And I'll get into that a little bit more. In contrast, the property crime class all saw decreases. And in a couple areas, I'll point out burglary in particular, saw a pretty significant decrease, which I'm sure that will be compared to next year, because that'll be a very low number that'll get benchmarked to. And then you see the percent change from 2017.
Chief, may I ask you a question on these?
Yes.
Are these numbers, they represent not prosecuted offenses, and these are just reports that had these occurrences?
These are actual offenses that were classified as crimes.
Okay.
I don't have the data whether or not they were prosecuted. I wouldn't have that.
Their arrest, are they all arrests?
They were all arrests.
Is that safe to say? Okay.
Yeah.
So they're all arrests, so they were referred for prosecution.
Arrest or reports taken. They may not.
Okay, so you may not have had
arrest. Correct.
It might not have been solved.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, like the property crime, somebody stole my weed eater and y'all came out and filled it out a form, but.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, it may not be actually an arrest associated with the offense.
But does it include if the report was taken?
Yes.
And it was assigned a detective and it determined that there was nothing that occurred or couldn't proceed further?
Yes.
It still includes that?
It was triaged. It may or may not have been assigned based on, our likelihood of solvability.
Okay.
Criteria that we look at.
So like the weed eater?
Yes.
Wouldn't be assigned, but it would still be counted?
Correct.
Okay.
Following a little bit further to your example earlier, if there were 3 shootings, that was 3 crimes. If a weed eater and a lawnmower taken, is that 2 thefts or is that 1? I'm just trying to be able to compare. That would be 2 also.
Yes. So the next slide and the next page, on your report, is a graph that depicts total property crime and total violent crime. I'll go with the better news first. We'll talk about property crime. As you can see, for the last 8 years, the trend line And like I said, 2018, we did see a significant decrease in the overall property crimes. In red is usually not good. And in this case, we see a little bit of a negative trend line. We did see, like I said earlier, an increase in all total violent crime categories listed. Major drivers of this were in the aggravated assault category. And we'll get into kind of where that came from. Actually, I'll do it now. When it comes to aggravated assaults, the two areas that saw increases and that usually typically drive aggravated assaults were shootings and domestic violence. Those are typically the major drivers in this category, and we saw a very significant increase in a number of shootings, individuals that actually were victimized on the street, more so than in years past. We did see a decrease towards the end of the year, so that increase decreased, if that makes any sense. The level of increase decreased. We put together a pretty significant task force targeting specific areas and specific individuals in terms of gang affiliation, and we saw some dramatic numbers decrease. Now, in the beginning of January, those numbers are staying fairly flat, and into February, a little bit up, but it's holding true. Now, I only got a C in statistics, but my crime analysis, who got an A+, he says based on his crime analysis and regression models and the like, that 2019 will come in, he's predicting far lower than 2018. So I'm going to hold him to that.
I thought, and I thought the way we classified some of these things changed a year ago. Maybe you said it already and I didn't hear you. Like the assault and the rape.
Well, rape, they just haven't changed the category because everyone's so used to seeing and reporting rapes, but rape actually is sexual assault. And sexual assault includes not just the rape between, a male and a female. Now it includes all varieties.
But didn't the definition
It did change?
change?
2014, 2015, yeah.
Somewhere in there? Okay, so I didn't.
Somewhere in there. And what we're seeing in that area did go up, and that was driven primarily with an increase in children that were victimized. There's more outcries. There's more education. There's definitely more of an emphasis in that area. So we're seeing, I believe, some of the aftermath of that. Again, when it comes to sexual assault, and I think it's important to tell you and for the public, there is not an issue of somebody or someone in our city perpetrating sexual assaults on individuals. The vast majority of these, the perpetrator is known to the victim. And although that is, an unfortunate situation, it does reflect in these stats. And again, the aggravated assault is what we're seeing that was an issue during the last year, and it's not looking like it's going to be as much of an issue this year. We are prepared to continue to put emphasis on targeting, those areas, and also individuals that are likely to perpetrate those types of crimes. Touchy. The next page is just a crime rate. Class 1 and Class 2 crime rates broke down by a total number of crimes, population, and then Class 1 crimes per 100,000 residents. Pretty much straightforward in terms of looking at the data that I've already presented to you, but then breaking it out in Class 1 crimes, Class 2 crimes per 100,000 residents, which is typically the standard for reporting. Class 1 crime rate pulled out specifically. Again, you can see that 2018 suffered with respect to a couple of areas, most notably aggravated assault, while property crimes decreased. Class 2 crimes are crimes that obviously are captured that are not Class 1. And you can see the list that are typically collected. And what's notable on these is some of these are proactive. You actually go out and make an arrest, and it counts against you in crime statistics such as DWI and the drug and narcotic arrests. Those are up. And so you look at that and you go, wow, that's up. But it also tells you that there were more arrests when it came to that area. And so it's like a double widget, so to speak. What is interesting here is you can see that forgery is up, but fraud was down. We were seeing, kind of an uptick in a lot of the fraud areas, although that didn't bear out this past year. But then again, forgery and counterfeit issues were up. And then you can see total Class 2 crimes being up 6.85%. Again, with the caveat that, those areas, some of those are proactive enforcement areas that are driving that up. And then a recap with both Class 1, Class 2 crimes listed. And again, it recaps what we've already been talking about, that tells you kind of where we stand in relation to the Class 1, which includes it also includes property crimes, but then it also Class 2. Arrests, we have seen a decrease in some of the arrest statistics. As you can see, most notably, we came about another 180 from the year before. We have done some analysis. I can tell you that based on the workload, our officers are staying very busy, but they're spending more time on the calls that they're going to. We also know that some of this, I can't tell you how much, but some of this is being impacted by a more stringent policy related to jail intake with respect to the Sanders-Bland Act. Some of that we're feeling a little bit with this because less individuals are being arrested that they would have been arrested because they're not going to fall within that criteria to be, jailed, booked, so to speak. And then we have seen a decrease in juvenile arrests, and that's primarily with the emphasis of decriminalizing a lot of the juvenile type of crime, and also the fact that there's more stringent standards on accepting juveniles at juvenile detention facility as well. So we're seeing that some of those numbers are actually lower as well. And then some of this reflects, staffing issues at times as well when you don't have as many people working. And that concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions if you wish.
I'd like to reemphasize how we do our reporting, because before somebody says, well, you're just adding up incidences because you just want to add up incidences, that's required by law. We just were proactive in adopting the national incident-based reporting. And so, it's not that we're trying to drive our numbers up by reporting.
Right. When I got here, you were already in the middle of doing that, and very few cities at that point in time had taken the initiative to take that leadership position, and now everybody's following. So eventually, everyone will be on the same page. But I think it's a truer reflection. It's a more of a transparent report. It gives the community a real truer reflection of what's going on in terms of crime reporting. And we have to do these annually. We report them to the state. The state reports them to the FBI, and then the FBI, recaps the reports on an annual basis. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief. I didn't say the one thing, though, earlier regarding to the false alarm issue that I talked to you about. I was going to tell council, we could call the sheriff's office half the time on those alarm calls and save us a lot of time, couldn't we? They could respond, right? Ain't that right? We kind of forget that. But I don't know that would work out very well, but I don't think I brought it up earlier during the false alarm discussion, but we do have a sheriff's office, and we do pay the taxes to support that sheriff's office, so people forget that. Anyway, thank you. It's not relevant to your report.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief, and all of your staff for everything that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we have 2 city manager reports left. Tracy Fox will do the fire report, and then Tom Legler will do the racial profile report.
Mayor, members of council, Ms. Garrett, good evening. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present our annual report by looking back on 2018.
I'm sorry, some of us have a little chuckle up here. The banter between you two isn't there as it was in the prior
I
chief.
gave my report
But
first.
I do have to pick on the chief a little here. This is pretty good here, chief. It's a budgetary thing? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Hey, and by the way, we print these in-house.
Okay.
Yes. Well, once again, thank you for allowing us to present our annual report looking back at 2018. I know Chief Craig would echo this sentiment. I think one of our favorite things to do as a chief of the department is to brag about our folks, and that's kind of what our report is based upon, is a look back on the value we bring to this community and the value we bring to our organization and the members of our organization. So it's a little different than the actual handout you have. It's much condensed, so we won't be here all night. Well, anyway, 2018 was a banner year for the Victoria Fire Department. As you remember, we were recognized by the Texas Fire Chiefs Association as a best practices department. We're one of 19 departments now in the state of Texas that have received that designation, and that designation has been available since 2013. So that was a huge accomplishment, and it's still the coveted award, or the award departments are striving to achieve. Our Fire Marshal's Office also received an award for outstanding work in fire prevention and education from the Texas Fire Marshals Association. So another outstanding work by Chief Legler and his team. And then on our EMS side, American Heart Association awarded us for, I think this is the 5th year, with a Gold Plus Award for our EMS cardiac care. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but once again, Mission Lifeline through American Heart Association awarded us the Gold Plus Award for our cardiac care. We'll jump into the numbers right quick. We won't have as many numbers as Chief Craig, but we'll have some pretty pictures and stuff to look at. But in 2018, we saw a slight decrease in number of incident responses. That can be directly attributed to Hurricane Harvey. We saw a huge spike in 2017 during the hurricane, and I like to say we're back to normal, our normal response pattern, normal calls for service. About 20% of that still remains out in the county. We respond to a little over 2,200 calls in the county for service. Kind of some unique anomalies, some increases that we did see. Oh, wrong way. Was a 34% increase in building fires. That's a big increase. That's a lot of work and a lot of time and effort. A huge spike in our building fires. Fire Marshal Legler evaluates that and looks at some causes. We did see an increase in incendiary fires in 2018 compared to 2017. Kind of like the police department struggles with false alarms, we struggle with what has quickly become an issue for us, which is lift assist calls. It has quickly become one of our highest number of requests for service, and that's basically if somebody has fallen and they need help off the ground, and we go out and service that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit of how we're planning to combat that. But that, just as the police department struggles with that, this is the one we struggle with when it comes to calls for service. Just some of our performance numbers. We had a unique opportunity to look at the nation when it comes to some of our response numbers and benchmarking. One of the things I'm really proud about, if you have a heart attack in Victoria County, you're in probably one of the best places in the state of Texas to have a heart attack. We have a great system that starts with our dispatch center all the way to the operating room at the hospitals. So if you're having a heart attack, we're going to get your artery unblocked in 90 minutes or less, 94% of the time, and that's an outstanding mark. American Heart Association says 90 minutes is great. We're doing it on average in 75 minutes, and usually it's in the 55 to 65-minute range. So there's an excellent system of care in Victoria, and we're part of that. And we're proud to be part of that along with dispatch and the hospitals. And the same is true to be said for strokes and trauma and all that stuff. although we had more structure fires last year, we still saved $30 million worth of property, and that is a great ratio. 98% of the property was saved that was impacted by fire in 2018. Our trauma calls, once again, speed is of the essence there, and 85% of our calls are delivered to the hospital in a timely manner. Looking at the nation, our turnout time is better than national average. Our response time's a little higher, but I attribute that to the Texas layout. You know, we're big, we're spread out, we're not condensed. So we see a little bit, and it's not a bad increase, and it's not a bad response time. We do respond to more EMS calls than fire calls on a higher rate than the national average. But the one I'm really proud of, once again, is the property loss. Per building fire, the national average is roughly 20,000. In Victoria County, it's 14,000, which is a great number. That includes county building fires. If you take out the county, that number is more like 9,000. So 50% difference from the national average to the performance here in Victoria.
Is your response time, is that city and county?
No, sir, that's just city.
Just city?
Yes, sir. And with all that said, we completed over 10,000 hours of training. We're kind of like a professional football team or sports team. We're practicing more than we're playing, so that's the analogy I like to use, a lot of practice. Some key moments and events in 2019. Once again, these are the moments and events that I feel like contribute to the community, to the well-being of the community. And the first and foremost is our fire prevention show. Nowhere in these folks' job description, these are all firefighters, does it say you have to put on a silly costume and dress up and sing and dance. And every year, these gruff and tough firefighters don these silly costumes, and they wrote the play this year and do an outstanding job entertaining over 2,000 children, and then exponentially educating their parents, their grandparents, and all that, and do a fabulous job of making our community safe. So I'm really proud of these folks for stepping out of their comfort zone and entertaining thousands of children. One of the big initiatives we've spearheaded or helped spearhead along with our Golden Crescent Regional Advisory Council is Stop the Bleed program. Mr. De La Garza is aware of this, and he's part of this with our RAC. And basically, that's just an education program to empower the everyday citizen to act in a bleeding emergency. And this is all, you can probably guess where this is spearheaded from or stems from, all the active shooter events. And basically what this program does is train citizens to stop a bleeding emergency. And with the help of the RAC and people like Mr. De La Garza, we've been able to train over 2,000 citizens in the Golden Crescent region. So we're very proud of that. And also, through a nice grant from LyondellBasell, we're able to purchase and train, purchase active bleeding control kits, active bleeding kits for all VISD campuses. And we placed one at all VISD campuses, and then we also trained every school nurse in Stop the Bleed.
Explain what RAC is.
Oh, RAC, excuse me. RAC is a state-mandated group. I'm probably not going to get this totally right, but basically it represents an area, the Golden Crescent region, Victoria County and the surrounding counties, and members of all medical hospitals, pre-hospital, different agencies are all part of this association. And this was the RAC charged with educating the community. That's one of their charges, and this is what we felt was important in light of all the recent active shooter events and things like that. So we picked Stop the Bleed. This Stop the Bleed campaign is a national campaign. I think it comes directly out of the White House. And we picked up on it and took the challenge. And like I said, we're educating more and more people every day. In 2018, we held our first State Fire Commission approved Public Fire Academy. These folks were not employees or potential, I guess, they weren't offered jobs. This was just purely a public academy. And we felt like this was a great contribution to the community because there hadn't been a fire academy in this region for a long time. And there's several agencies, not just the Victoria Fire Department, that are struggling with recruitment and retention of local talent. And our first class was a hit. We graduated 13 out of 14. We currently employ 3 of these members and hope to hire a few more, but it was a huge success, not just for the Victoria Fire Department, for the region to provide a workforce. And now we have our second class underway, and it's going well also. One of the things I'd like to mention, because it kind of shocked me this year, a few years ago we got a great donation and grant from the 100 Club for our unmanned aerial drone, for lack of a better term. The little flying thing that has a very sophisticated camera on it. When we got that, our vision was we're going to use it for large-scale events, big, large grass fires, so on and so forth, those type of things. Our operators of that system have taken it to a whole new level. And what we saw in 2018 they start using the drone for is damage assessment. They got so good at it that law enforcement is calling them to do traffic scene reconstruction and investigation and documentation. We also did a pilot program with Development Services where we did kind of a traffic study, that bottom right picture of traffic around a certain facility to gauge our response to that area if an emergency happens. So the potential of this is limitless, and we're really proud of our operators that have taken on this project and made it their own and really advanced their knowledge and ability with this device far more than we ever envisioned, and we hope to use it more for more city projects and things of that nature. So they've gotten so good where they can take pictures so precisely that they can come back and do 3D models that are to scale of critical infrastructure. One of our commitments to our members is that everybody goes home well. And thanks to the support of city management and council, we've been able to implement some very key things in our cancer prevention initiative program. Extra sets of gear and PPE, advanced medical screening, those type of things. So we're able to honor our commitment to our folks and make sure they go home well. Unfortunately, over the past 5 years, we've lost 2 active members due to cancer. And this is our commitment to our folks that we're going to do all we can to prevent them from being exposed to cancer-causing agents. And last but not least, what to expect in 2019. Once again, another great grant and opportunity from the 100 Club. We received funds to develop a tactical EMS unit. And hopefully later this summer, they'll be deploying with our law enforcement officers during high-risk warrants and things of that nature, just to make sure the officers are safe, make sure if any civilians get injured or harmed in those serving of warrants and those type of events, that medical services will be right there available to be deployed. Through Dr. McNeil's leadership, as we talked about earlier, we are constantly advancing the quality of healthcare in our region. We'll be instituting a whole blood program, hopefully by the end of the year. And there are very few agencies in the state of Texas that are doing this. It has proven to be a life-saving initiative agencies are taking on. It's just very logistically challenging and very difficult to pull off, and thanks to Dr. McNeil's leadership, we're being able to pull this off with our local blood bank and places like that. As we talked about our fall risk folks, that number has significantly increased for us and putting a significant demand on us, so we're reevaluating how we respond to those things. We're coming up with a program where we can try to cut off that need for 911 to assist people off the ground, be it education, environmental screenings, connecting those folks with the appropriate resources to help them prevent their falls, or if they do fall, how they get help.
And Tracy, they're not injured.
Not injured,
and
correct,
that's the key
correct.
They're not injured.
They're
They just need
not
help
injured.
getting up.
And we classify those as lift assist calls only. That's it. If they're injury, that becomes a medical call, and it's a whole different subject. These are just, hey, I slipped. I need somebody to put me back on my chair or whatever.
Does the fire department have a published non-emergency line? Like the police department kind of does?
It's the same number.
It's the same number.
Same
Yes,
number.
sir.
It's a non-emergency number.
Is that how it's listed, or?
I think it's listed as non-emergency.
Yes,
number.
and we have
Yeah.
our office administration line numbers and things of that nature too.
Okay.
But they can, for fire or police, they can call it non-emergency number.
And kind of what happens when these calls come in, our dispatch center does a great job of screening the call through our emergency medical dispatch system, and we don't necessarily go lights and sirens to these calls if we have any information on that. And we send the appropriate amount of resources and things like that. 2 of our other big key initiatives in 2019 will be our citizen responder program. And basically, that's an add-on to the Stop the Bleed that was so successful, and people really wanted that. We said, you know what, let's add a little bit more to that, so we can put as the sign says, everyone can save a life. We're teaching hands-only CPR, Stop the Bleed, EpiPen assist, and using a fire extinguisher. Not too many people, thank goodness, have to use a fire extinguisher. So, in the event that you had to, we want you to be ready to use that and know how to use that for small fires. The other is our Safe Neighborhood Victoria, which is basically a crash course on the Citizen Responder Program for neighborhood associations and groups like that. And we also do the smoke detector installation and stuff like that for Safe Neighborhood Victoria. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our 2 volunteer groups and associations. Our chaplains program is outstanding. They are there for us to support the fire department in every need necessary. And then our fire corps. They come out all hours of the night to support firefighters doing rehab and different things of that nature. And, you know, we are a much better place because of these 2 groups. And they help us achieve our mission of making sure everybody goes home well. That's the conclusion report, unless you have any questions.
Good job.
Before you step away, I know we talked about this and it wasn't in his report, but there was a nice newspaper article about the mosque fire.
Oh, yes, most
And,
definitely.
you know, Tom Legler was the first person out there to start collecting data at that scene for the crime, and Tom was integral component in that conviction.
Very much so.
Of that, so he's to be commended for that.
Very much so.
I know Tracy was going to talk about it. I had some little concerns, but then it was in the newspaper.
That's right. We were like, well, it may be on appeal, so we kind of held that out. But yes, Tom, Chief Legler, and his staff, you know, the feather in their hat, I think, or the thing that stands out in my mind is their collaboration and cooperation with state, local, and federal partners in that thing to make that happen. So without that, I don't think it would have happened as well.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll be happy to, the next one is so easy, I can answer that unless there are any other questions about the annual report.
Thank you for all you do and for
Thank you.
everyone that you work with.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. They appreciate that very much.
Racial profiling, are you going to do that while
I
you're
will take
standing
care
up
of it.
there? Okay.
Because Chief Craig described it so well a few weeks ago. The Chief Legler and the Fire Marshal's Office are a licensed law enforcement agency within the Victoria Fire Department, and they also are held by the state rules for racial profiling. They fall on the other end of the spectrum. Because they do not make traffic stops as a normal part of their daily operation, they are allowed to submit the full exemption racial profiling report, which says we don't have anything to report. But we're required to report that to council.
One quick thing before you go, regarding Mr. Legler, there is you got a session, educational session set up in May or March? It's March now. What date is that?
It's Thursday, May 9th.
So Thursday, May 9th, and where's it located?
It's going to be Thursday, May 9th at the Community Center Annex. It's a fire marshal roundtable. It's basically, we're going to get up in front of whoever wants to attend, learn about what's required to be a business, to build a business, remodel a business, or even maintain a business. Just provide information for it, allow it discussion, question and answer sessions, just trying to invite the community to bring those questions and be.
Is this the first one you've done?
This will be the first one we're going to do. We're going to see how well this goes. I hope we maybe do this twice a year, or maybe more. It just depends on what the crowd looks like. So
it's neat. I saw that on Facebook, and you need to promote that. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
Is that going to be like, when you say for businesses like restaurants, that they need to know how many people they can sit on and the capacity and things like that? Is that what you're talking about when you say business?
We can. Well, we're going to open up to any business. Now, if they have a question about specifically how many people they can have in their restaurant, we can obviously follow on, because that's going to be a very site-specific answer. Okay. But as far as maintaining their extinguishers and their hood systems, sprinklers and fire alarms, basic fire extinguishers, maintaining exits and emergency lights, and all those little life safety components that go along with having a business.
And that's also going to be in conjunction with, I don't know what department is the one that sends us out the annual, fire hood what is it,
That's-
cleanup and all that stuff?
That's a program called the Compliance Engine that we use that sends us automated letters.
Right.
And that's actually one of the topics we're going to discuss, so people are more familiar with it.
Okay.
There have been some changes with that program, so we want to get out in front of people and talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Chief.
it.
Great reports by everyone tonight. We really appreciate it. That concludes our business in here. We do have an executive session. We'll just go next door. It's late, and we'll try to get it done quickly.
The City Council will recess for executive session on the 5th day of March 2019 at 7:50 PM. The subject matter of the executive session deliberation is as follows. Texas Government Code Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property interest due to the fact that a deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the city in negotiations with a third person. Thank you.
I'm calling.